Welcome to My 70's Confessional, where Miguel Myers ATX and AnthonyJeromM discuss one iconic horror movie for every year of the 1970s. Miguel loves the 70s, and I don't. On this journey through this unique decade, we'll find out, do you really think the 70s are that great, or are you normal?
So why are we here? We're here because Anthony is wrong. He needs to know it. We're here to showcase some of the finest horror movies that the 70s have to offer and see if we can help Anthony get an appreciation for 70s horror movies specifically and the 70s in general. So way back in season 1, December 2021, Anthony came on the show and we talked Half Black Christmas. And we had a fucking blast. And even before that, maybe, or during the episode, it came out that Anthony hated the 70s. And it blew my mind because I absolutely loved the 70s. And I love, there's so many movies to still find and explore that I haven't seen. When somebody says to me that they hate the 70s, the genre, or the decade generally, but then like specifically horror movies still in the 70s and all that, I was like, who is this person, right?
You took that personally.
and I took that personally. So I made just a joke, an offhand joke saying, now we have to do this My 70s Confessional with Anthony so that we can talk about these 70s horror movies. And he said no, jokingly, dismissively, actually disrespectfully.
I was going to say disrespectfully and aggressively.
So at the end of the episode, after the song, there was a little snippet of how Anthony really felt about it. He said something, you know what, I'm going to cut it in right here. Yeah, man, thank you so much, man. What'd you think? Did you have fun?
I had a really good time. And here's the thing. We're not going to do that 70s shit. But the thought of it is truly delightful.
Yeah. God damn. Let me think about it for a little bit or something. Shit.
No. No. But it would be just the idea is so funny. But I had such a great time.
So then ever since then, we started talking more and became more friendly on Discord and through Podmortem. That's how we met, which shout out to them.
I love you.
Best podcast in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
So we just started talking, and then little by little, I wore Anthony down. So, so what's your side of the story here, Anthony?
I have been coerced by Miguel to come onto the show with offerings of chicken nuggets and shrimp. And so I was.
Is there such a thing as shrimp nuggets?
It's called popcorn shrimp.
Okay.
Which I don't care for.
Yeah. So Anthony, before we get into it, why don't you tell me and the audience how you really feel about the 70s? Like why you hate it in particular, like the decade and also the movie.
How I really feel about the 70s. I mean, honestly, they're just okay. To me, the 70s is a perfect combination of modern and gross. It has all the grossness of the past you could think of, like unwashed people, bad hygienic practices, bad colors, bad outfits, bad fashion. Honestly, bad art as well, if I'm being serious. But also, it's also very modern. They really wanted to be the family of the future. They thought about progress. Didn't really get too far, in my opinion, but they at least started thinking about it. So I don't know. It's the ugliest decade. I just I'm not even a fan of really pretty things. It's just that the 70s has so many ugly things, and 70s porn stashes, ugly. On the right person, amazing. Do not get me wrong. I will not fault you there. That yellow, green, and orange color palette that I hate so much of the 70s, disgusting. However, on the right person, fantastic. But I just think there's so much wrong with the 70s. Just the fact that one person makes it look good, it's not enough for me. So
I asked for one reason, Anthony.
And you know what else? I just think it's anyhow. No.
Okay. All right. So with that attitude, I was like, I can't let that stand. So I wanted to, in an effort to kind of show Anthony what other people see in the 70s. I wanted to get him on the podcast or get, yeah, basically I was like, all right, this is it. I'm ending season 1. I never planned on having seasons. I was just going to go through. But when this shit came up, I'm like, no, we stop everything. This is the end of season 1. We're starting a 70s, season 2. We're renaming the show My 70s Confessional. And we're getting Anthony on here and we're just going to berate him for hours on end for 10 weeks in a row. So that's why we're here.
Yep. And honestly, a lot of you alls like the 70s. I don't get it. And none of you have been able to make a proper argument. So listen, I'm a fan of conversation. I'm here to listen. If you can teach me the 70s are great, cool. Do I believe that you can? No. I don't believe that you can, but let's find out.
Along with just talking horror movies with Anthony, which is just so much fun, I also was selfishly wanted to become better friends with Anthony because he's a cool dude. So like this is two
Oh.
parts. So he totally fell into my trap here. So what we're gonna do is I wanted to do a little intro into the 70s so we can see where we're at. Okay, so the 70s were a tumultuous time. Actually, I wanted to go back a little bit. I got a lot of this from history.com, which is basically the history channel. That was some of the references that I used. So the
Oh damn!
70s
So they actually have historical stuff on there. It's not just all ice road truckers and
and
World War II stuff.
Pawn Stars or whatever.
Pawn Stars. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. You can actually learn something on the history website.
Yes,
That's
sir.
what a time to be alive.
So the 70s were a tumultuous time. In some ways, the decade was a continuation of the 60s. Women, African Americans, Native Americans, Hispanics, LGBTQIA, and other marginalized people continued their fight for equality, and many Americans joined the protest against the ongoing war in Vietnam. In other ways, however, the decade was a denial of the 60s. A quote unquote new right mobilized in defense of political conservatism and quote unquote traditional family values. And the behavior of
Mm.
President Richard Nixon undermined many people's faith in the federal government. By the end of the decade, these divisions and disappointments had set a tone for public life that many would argue is still with us today. So let's talk about the conservative backlash. Many Americans, especially working class and middle class whites, responded to the turbulence of the late 60s, the riots, the anti war protests, the counterculture, by embracing a new kind of conservative populism. Sick of what they interpreted as spoiled hippies and whining protesters of the 60s, tired of an interfering government that, in their view, coddled poor people and black people at taxpayer expense, these individuals formed what
Mm.
political strategists called a silent majority. The silent majority swept President Richard Nixon into office in 68. Almost immediately, Nixon began to dismantle the quote unquote welfare state that had fostered such resentment. He abolished as many parts of President Lyndon B. Johnson's war on poverty as he could, and he made a show of his resistance to mandatory school desegregation plans such as busing. Nixon's policies favored the interests of the middle class white people who felt slighted by the Great Society of the 60s. So I wanted to mention that part because everything is cyclical. And we could talk about this exact thing happening after President Obama when he left
Hmm.
office and Trump being swept into office on this kind of sort of same platform, you know. So
That's very interesting that you bring that up because there was some part of me that actually wants to believe that we're kind of in the 70s. Like we're reaching an age in 2022 where like it's kind of okay to be homophobic again on a on a lawmaking level. And I just see a lot of the struggles that people are trying to combat these days are the exact same struggles that they're trying to combat 50 years ago. And it's like very weird to look at the 70s because I'm that Leonardo DiCaprio pointing meme, like that's happening now. Like,
yeah. I mean, you're right. The same battles that we fought hard for in the 70s, 60s, and 70s with women's liberation and civil rights and equal rights and all that stuff. Conservatives are trying to kind of claw that back as much as they can.
mm-hmm,
Right.
mm-hmm,
So, also, when we're talking about that, we're going to talk about fighting for women's rights. So, during the 70s, many groups of Americans continued to fight for expanded social and political rights. In 72, after years of campaigning by feminists, Congress approved the Equal Rights Amendment, the ERA, to the Constitution, which reads Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. It seemed that the amendment would pass easily. 22 of the necessary 38 states ratified it right away, and the remaining states seemed close behind. However, the ERA alarmed many conservative activists who feared that it would undermine quote unquote traditional gender roles. These activists mobilized against the amendment and managed to defeat it. In 1977, Indiana became the 35th and last state to ratify the ERA. So this is something that's still been 45 years later, and we still haven't gotten the Equal Rights Amendment passed through Congress.
Mhm.
So it just goes to show you, man, that
Yes.
fucking we've been fighting for this shit for a long time, and it's gonna still gonna be a while, unfortunately,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So then also with that comes the anti-war movement. Even though very few people continued to support the Vietnam War, President Nixon feared that a retreat would make the United States look weak. As a result, instead of ending the war, Nixon and his aides devised ways to make it more palatable, such as limiting the draft and shifting the burden of combat onto South Vietnamese soldiers. This policy seemed to work at the beginning of his term in office. When the United States invaded Cambodia in 1970, however, hundreds of thousands of protesters clogged city streets and shut down college campuses. On May 4th of 1970, National Guardsmen shot 4 student demonstrators at an anti-war rally at Kent State University in Ohio in what became known as the Kent State shooting. 10 days later, police officers killed 2 black student protesters at Mississippi's Jackson State University. Members of Congress tried to limit the president's power by revoking the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, authorizing the use of military force in Southeast Asia, but Nixon simply ignored them. Even after
Mhm.
the New York Times published the Pentagon Papers, which called the government's justifications for war into question, the bloody and inconclusive conflict continued, and American troops did not leave the region until 1973. Again, we have a president who believes himself to be a king and wants to do anything that he wants to do, and will take down anybody in his path. Right? That's what we had in Trump. So it's
Mm.
yeah, exactly. And then we have, of course, the Watergate scandal. As his term in office wore on, President Nixon grew increasingly paranoid and defensive. Though he won re-election by a landslide in 1972, he resented any challenge to his authority and approved of attempts to discredit those who opposed him. In June of 72, police found 5 burglars from Nixon's own committee to re-elect the president in the office of the Democratic National Committee, located in the Watergate office building. Soon they found that Nixon himself was involved in the crime. He had demanded that the FBI stop investigating the break in and told his aides to cover up the scandal. In April of 74, a congressional committee approved 3 articles of impeachment: obstruction of justice, misuse of federal agencies, and defying the authority of Congress. Before Congress could impeach him, however, President Nixon announced that he would resign. Gerald Ford took over his office and, to the distaste of many Americans, pardoned Nixon right away.
Oh.
So there's so many parallels there to what
Mhm.
happened just within the last couple of years, right?
Mhm.
So then let's also talk about the fashion that you talked about.
Why? No.
So along with like the social and political upheaval that was going on, there was also like a revolution in fashion. I would say a revolution. You would say like just disgusting mistakes or something, right?
There was a change. We can call
Well,
it that.
and when we get to like black exploitation, we could talk about what they looked like. So
Mhm.
we will be covering that in a future episode.
Because I do want to say real quick, international fashion, specifically Italian, and even fashion in the United States from Black people, some of the best of all time. But it's like that American, I don't know, with American fashion, like middle class white people fashion. No, they don't know what they were doing, and they didn't care either.
Yeah, I think it's like Sears catalog stuff, or I don't know.
Yeah, Sears
But
catalog.
so bell bottom pants, flowing maxi dresses, ponchos, and frayed jeans dominated 70s fashion. Tie dye, inspired by the 60s hippie style, continued to be worn, while patchwork and plaid fabrics gained popularity. The plaid, I think that's what you're thinking of when you're thinking about ugly 70s style, is that plaid, because that
Plaid
shit,
and patchwork.
yeah, that was a mistake right there.
You know what? Yeah, the patchwork just sets me off. I'm like, no,
Well,
that's too
because
much.
they brought patchwork back in jeans, like in the mid 2000s, with like hip hop culture. They brought that shit back, and
Hmm.
even me, I was like, nah, man, I can't do it. I can't do it. So then let's talk about music just for a little bit. After Watergate, many people withdrew from politics altogether. They turned instead to pop culture. Easy to do in such a trend laden, fad happy decade. They listened to 8-track tapes of Jackson Brown, Olivia Newton John, Donna Summer, and Marvin Gaye. Disco rose, and with it, the sounds of ABBA, the Bee Gees, and Donna Summer. On the rock front, bands like the Rolling Stones, Van Halen, Pink Floyd, and Queen dominated airwaves. So let's talk about that. So we know how you feel about the 70s in general,
Hmm.
the movies, the fashion. How do you feel about the music?
Honestly, I think I rather enjoy 70s music. A lot of music, not that a lot of music I like is from the 70s, but nah, the music's okay. The music gets a pass. They're their own thing.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, I think that too. Like 70s music gets a smash, right?
Well, because they were all on cocaine, so everything was fucking emotion fueled, and I love it.
All right. So then, additionally, the 70s saw a return of handicrafts such as latch hook rugs and macrame, while sports like racquetball and yoga gained popularity. Many people read I'm Okay, You're Okay, and The Joy of Sex. They experimented with wife swapping parties and smoked pot.
Hmm.
In general, by the end of the decade, many young people were using their hard fought freedom to simply do as they pleased, to wear what they wanted, to grow their hair long, to have sex, to do drugs. Their liberation, in other words, was intensely personal.
Hell yeah.
So now that we have some context, let's talk about the movies of the era. The film output of the 70s is, in my opinion, Anthony,
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
my opinion, is such a consistently high quality that it's hard to argue that it wasn't the best decade of the film industry. It certainly
Fuck.
was for American film. So it felt like the inmates were running the asylum after the failure of the studio system. And while they would have eventually ruined it for themselves, for a time, the director was king. So the 70s was a decade of experimentation. People were experimenting with sex and drugs, and they were also experimenting with film. It was a time of social change, and the films of the era reflect that change. There's a sense when watching a lot of films from that era that was dubbed the New Hollywood, roughly 67 to 80, that they really thought that anything was possible. Inspired by European art and independent cinema, 70s films had a very different aesthetic that made them different from anything that had come before them. They were gritty, narratively complex, violent, and at times uncomfortable and uncompromising. When you look at the quality of the films, no decade can touch the 70s. All of these movies came out in the decade. Rocky, The Last Picture Show, Nashville, Annie Hall, The French Connection, Network, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, The Conversation, Harold and Maude, both Godfather 1 and 2, Taxi Driver, Dog Day Afternoon, Five Easy Pieces, The Sting, Mean Streets, and Chinatown, along with all the other movies that were coming out of this blaxploitation subgenre, like Black Caesar, Willie Dynamite, Three the Hard Way, Coolie High, Coffee, Dolomite, Superfly, The Mac, Foxy Brown, and Shaft, to name a few. In fact, those are some of my favorite. I would put these above anything else in the 70s, the
No, yeah.
blaxploitation.
Same. I love Shaft.
Yeah.
Oh, the movies. Oh.
So then, of course, the best horror movies as well: Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Don't Look Now, Alien, Half Black Christmas, Dawn of the Dead, The Wicker Man, Jaws, The Omen, Eraserhead, Zombie 2, Carrie, The Hills Have Eyes, The Brood, Suspiria, Phantasm, The Exorcist, and of course, saving the best for last, Halloween. So, some of these we'll be talking about, but I wanted to do a bit of a deeper dive for Anthony so he can get a more well rounded look at the decade in horror. And that includes the experimental side, which brings us finally to John Waters' art house exploitation film, Multiple Maniacs.
Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Take it away, Anthony.
So, Multiple Maniacs. It's personally my first John Waters movie. Is that your first John Waters?
No, I've actually seen recently a lot. Like I grew up watching Crybaby because I think it showed up on Comedy Central a lot. This with Ricky Lake and Johnny Depp. It's like a It's about the 50s or 60s, like car genre or car sub genre or whatever.
Oh, what wasn't Ricky Lake in Hairspray?
Yeah, Ricky Lake was in a couple of his movies.
Okay, oh,
He
interesting.
works. John Waters works with a troupe of actors called the Dreamland.
Yeah, the Dreamland acting troupe.
Yeah, the Dreamland Act.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did an episode of Serial Mom recently, and
Mm-hmm.
then after that, I just kind of went on a bender. My neighbor Tim, he let me Female Trouble, which came out in '74, and then he let me Polyester, which came out in '81. And then we're doing Multiple Maniacs today. But I think the movie that John Waters is most famous for is Pink Flamingos. So I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't do a second episode on John Waters and not have seen Pink Flamingos. So I saw Pink Flamingos last night,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm glad we're not talking about that movie
Right.
because I think you probably would have quit the podcast because this movie is fucking weird as shit, but Pink Flamingos is even weirder.
So I'm aggressively homosexual. So like a lot of gay people know who Divine is. So like even though I know two things about Divine. One of them I'll get to them later. But the one thing that I think every gay person knows about her is that she ate dog poop and pink flamingos and got sick. So I would have quit if this was the first one. I would have been like, no, I was right. The 70's are garbage.
Yeah,
Thank you, but no thank you.
yeah. And it wasn't even a plot device. Like it wasn't integral to the story, you know. And I didn't know about that until within the last month or so. I didn't know about this whole eating dog shit thing. So it was a surprise to me. I found out within like the last 2 weeks about the dog shit eating
Mm,
thing, and then I saw it last night, and I'm glad I knew about it going ahead. Otherwise, I would have been like, "What the fuck?"
yeah.
So yes, suffice to say, I am now kind of well versed in John Waters.
Okay, very cool. This is my very first time ever watching a John Waters movie. Um, I mean, aside from Hairspray, but like this is what I think the kind of movie John Waters is known for. I don't know when I'll be getting to my next one, but this one it was interesting. Honestly, it's one of those movies. I'm not glad I watched it, but I'm definitely glad it's finally like in the library. It's not something I have to think about ever again. So
Like Criterion picked it up. It's like on the Criterion channel, and it came out. They released it. I think that's amazing.
yeah, and I have questions for her because Criterion, why this one? I
Well, a
um
couple of his. I think they picked up a couple of his.
well,
And it
good.
looks
Okay.
great. It looks great. Like they did a I don't remember if it was 2K or 4K transfer, but the one you saw it on HBO Max, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, that's the brand new transfer. And I was watching an interview with John Waters, and he oversaw the transfer, the process of it. He was included in every aspect of it because he owns all the rights to all these movies. You know, at least his early work, right? Because it was all
Hmm.
self financed, and
Yeah.
so when they were starting to they were going through the negative, and they're like, hey, do you want us to keep this like grainy look with all the hair and all like the torn cell parts and all that stuff? And he's like, no, make it look pretty. If I had the money
Yeah.
when I shot it, I would have made it look beautiful. I didn't go for this grindhouse thing because I like the aesthetic. I didn't have the money for it. So the
Right.
version we saw that was like beautifully restored.
So now I have even more questions because this is approved by him. So it's like you said this was okay. Like this, you subjected me to that.
Well,
Okay.
also you have to remember, like I said earlier, they were all on drugs, including him. They were all on acid. So
Right. Okay.
when it came to specific scenes, including the one at the very end, or like we were talking, I was like, "Yo, that one scene," and you're like, "There's three scenes like that." You're like, oh, it's like okay, but that one scene towards the end, we'll talk about. Well, I'll just say it. Like, if you haven't seen the movie, go see the movie. There's gonna be spoilers or whatever. And I don't want to spoil this for you because it wasn't spoiled for me, and it came out of nowhere, and it was fucking crazy. So you've been warned, right? Like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. When the lobster shows up,
Yeah.
they were questioning him about it in the interview, and he's like, at the time, it seemed perfectly logical that a lobster would show up, but also we were all on acid, so you know.
I do remember in that interview where he was like, "Well, the entire ending made sense to me. She's gone through this terrible ordeal. This lobster comes and wrecks her shit. Of course, she's gonna go through the city and cause havoc." I was like, "That is not a logical progression of steps. Like, there's a few things missing there, Johnny. Like,
Yeah,
just a few." And but also, being on acid, like you just think you know what's going on, so like you don't need to put pieces together.
Yeah,
Um,
acid is a hell of a drug, right?
it is. I would recommend it. Do acid if you're too scared to do shrooms. It won't hurt your stomach. So I've heard. All right. So the very first thing that I want to talk about before we get into the actual movie itself is Harris Glenn Milstead, aka Divine. That is the star of the movie. Divine was known as an American actor, singer, drag queen, very, very, very closely associated with John Waters. Now, Divine was usually a character actor, performing female roles in like cinematic and theatrical productions. Um, for basically for Harris Glenn Milstead's career, pretty much they adopted a female drag persona, and that's kind of who, for the most part, that's who the one who was in doing the acting work, Divine. Not so much Harris Glenn Milstead himself, but Divine was the one who was in these acting roles. Now, did you know? I think this is the second thing that all gay people know about Divine was that she was the inspiration for Ursula the Sea Witch in Little Mermaid. Did you know that?
Oh shit! No, I didn't know that. That's dope as fuck.
Yeah. So
That's
if you take a look at
gutsy
Ursula,
on Disney's part. Like I would never think that
mhm,
they would do something like that. That's cool.
there's yeah, there's a whole world of it's called like the secret gay world of Disney, where it's like these music composers, these dancers, they will take things that are popular to gay people or the gay community, and they'll insert it into Disney films in some way, some fashion, aka Divine being the inspiration for Ursula. Like if you look at Ursula's makeup, oh, that's Divine. Those, you see those thin eyebrows makeup, that's Divine for sure.
I
um,
totally see it now that you're saying it. Yeah, it's undeniable, right?
Absolutely. Now, also one thing about Divine is Divine played the mother character in Hairspray and the Turnblad. Now, because of Divine's performance, pretty much since then they hire a man to play that mother's role. Pretty much put them up in drag because they whatever they're trying to capture was based off Divine's original performance. And I just think that's kind of I think that's really cool because actors are like people in the theater are very superstitious. So I can definitely see like, no, a man did this role really well that one time. Everybody else has to do it that way too. Like just kind of how I picture like people acting in theater.
Yeah.
I'm not of the theater, so I don't know. So the other person that I want to talk about is John Waters himself. So John Waters, what did he do for this movie? He composed the music, he shot it, he edited it, he wrote it, he produced it, he directed it, he got the financing for it. John Waters did everything about this movie for this movie. So some of the more you mentioned the films earlier, but some of the more popular films or more well-known films: Multiple Maniacs, 1970; Pink Flamingos, 1972; Female Trouble, 1974. He directed the comedy Hairspray, which was in 1988. I didn't even know that was a John Waters production because that was like the least weird thing I've ever seen by him. So I was like, oh, this guy, no, this is some normie did this. I don't, I would not have expected that.
Well, if I could just for a second, I want to say
Of
that
course.
John Waters is an artist. He wouldn't call himself an artist. In fact, in that interview, they say he's not an artist,
Mm-hmm.
right? But to me, he's a genius because he subverts everyone's opinions of him or what they think he's going to do, right? So
Mm-hmm.
he does all these movies and then he follows it up with Hairspray. It's a musical, and it's so cookie cutter, like that it gets a PG rating. And in fact, like in that interview that we watched, the studio was encouraging him to throw some f bombs in there or some some swear words in there to get a PG-13 rating because I think he said that it was a PG movie. And so when they signed up John Waters to do this musical, they thought they were going to get this dirty, raunchy movie. But he was like, you know what? No, that's what you think I'm gonna do. I'm actually gonna do something else. And so now he's known for Hairspray, and people like you just said, you didn't even realize it was a John Waters movie. So it's not about him selling out to the studio system because that's not what he did. Because the rest of the movies that he made were studio movies, like Crybaby and
Mm-hmm.
Serial Mom and Cecil B. Demented and all those that came afterwards at the tail end of his career. They were still John Waters weird fucking movies, but
Mm-hmm.
he could switch it around when he wanted to. That's why I love. I really I may not. His movies are not my favorite movies. I'll say that
Mm-hmm.
right now. But I love
Mm-hmm.
John Waters, the person and the director.
I can fuck with that. Absolutely. They want this filth movie. He's like, you know what? Let's make it about race. No, you're not getting what you want.
Exactly. Well, and it did. I didn't see all of it because I hate musicals. There's a very specific type of
Oh,
musical that I can watch, and it wasn't.
whoa, 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 whoa.
my
I
mu-
thought it
my
was boys. No,
my musical confession. Stay tuned for season
right,
3.
right. We're starting off with Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny, one of the best musicals ever. This guy doesn't like them. No.
Can't do it. Can't do it. But from what I did see, it was kind of the Hairspray was kind of like overly simplistic when it came to race relations,
Mm-hmm.
and had a little bit of a white savior complex going on in there as well. So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like the most progressive thing, but it was still, somewhat
I mean,
progressive.
they tried.
They
They
tried. He
tried.
definitely tried, right? He could have gone a different way with it. And like, he's still an old school dude, like born in the 40s, like 45 or something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
you could still see a lot of that in what he does,
Right.
especially when it came to the race relations in Hairspray.
It's like, how can I be racist? I love fucking black guys. Whoa. Okay, so we have a lot to teach you about what it means to like black people. It's not that.
Also, do you know any of his nicknames?
No, I don't.
Okay. So John Waters, aka the Pope of Trash, the Duke of Dirt, the Prince of Puke, the People's Pervert, the Ayatollah of Assholes, and his personal favorite, the Anal Ambassador.
Now, is this man a homosexual? No.
Oh.
No. No, I'm kidding.
Well, specifically, the anal ambassador thing is kind of hitting me this morning because last night, Pink Flamingos, I witnessed a man lift up his legs, lay on his back on the ground, lift up his legs, and shit. And we saw everything. Everything.
Oh.
So that anal ambassador is kind of hitting me with the John Waters this morning.
Like in a movie? Because I mean, I've seen it on websites, but like never in a movie.
Yeah. After I saw the movie, I was curious. And so I looked it up. No, in the movie,
Yikes.
when I tell you that John Waters is trash in the best way possible, understand that he is trash in the best way possible. Like his movies, I'm sorry. He is a wonderful, delightful being. His movies are trash in the best possible way. And he loves that. He embraces that. Right.
Cool. I don't co-sign that, but it's nice to know how Miguel feels. And the last thing I have to say about John Waters is we can't forget his appearance on the classic Simpsons episode Homer's Phobia, episode 15, season 8. He's basically just Homer's gay friend and teaches Homer about not being homophobic. But that was my first ever look into John Waters, was that episode of The Simpsons.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I completely forgot about that, and I think Travis from Podmortem or
Mm-hmm.
even Renee would have like defriended us if we didn't bring that up. You know?
I feel like the whole time they're like, "Hey, are you going to mention the Simpsons episode or nah?" Because like
Travis is just like sweating, rocking in his chair. Like,
yeah,
what are they going to say, man?
he's like,
What
"All
are they
right."
gonna say?
He's like, "Crybaby, Pecker, Cecil B. Demented, Simpsons." Like, so Multiple Maniacs itself, to 1970s independent American black comedy horror film, composed, shot, edited, written, produced, and directed by John Waters. Now, this is his second feature film, and this movie is supposedly called his first talkie, which is referred to, which movies with people talking are called talkies. So this is after silent films. I don't. I just found that interesting. You know, I see movies in the 60s where they're talking. I just really didn't imagine a movie in 1970 being called a talkie.
Yeah, that's
But
weird. Obviously, like talkies came out in the end of the 20s, like in the 30s. So yeah,
right.
I think specifically because he had a movie came out before this one. I forget the name of it. I think it was called Mondo Trasho. That was a silent.
Yes.
That was a silent movie that came out in '69. So it was like feature length, but it was silent. So that's why I think they're saying.
I don't like that.
I don't like it either. I don't like it.
If I made a movie today and it was a silent movie, my next film can then not be called a talkie because that's the norm. Like that's so no. Yeah, so I don't, whatever. Good for you. You know, I wouldn't. That seems like something he would do. So, Multiple Maniacs, as well as a few other John Waters movies, they feature actors who are part of what's called the Dreamline Acting Troupe. This features Divine, Mary Vivian Pierce, David Lockery, Mink Stoll, Edith Massey, George Figs, Cookie Mueller. Um, Now, the plot of this movie follows a traveling group of like sideshow freaks who rob unsuspecting audience members. And as we mentioned a little bit earlier, in 2016, the art house film distributor Janus Films, with the video distribution company, the Criterion Collection, they undertook the restoration of this entire movie with approval every step of the way from John Waters, and that was released in 2016. So, with all of that information, I'm now going to get into Multiple Maniacs.
I'm so excited.
All right, so we begin with a carnival barker of sorts. We come to find out his name, Mr. David, played by David Lockery, as he tries to get passersby to attend this once-in-a-lifetime entertainment event, the Cavalcade of Perversion. This show itself, it's run by the legend, star, statement herself, Lady Divine, and her boyfriend, Mr. David, kind of runs shit too. Like, kind of. Now, the Cavalcade of Perversion is a traveling freak show. Now, this is a troupe of misfits, freaks, queers, all these kind of, people whose shocking proclivities are topped only by those of their leader. Now, unknown to those attending this free exhibit, it consists of various interests and fetish acts. Now, despite this show being free, the various performers must beg and kind of even physically drag the reluctant passersby to attend. Now, as Mr. David is getting people to attend, pretty much building up a crowd, we see the members of the cavalcade doing as follows. The very first thing we see is a woman who is enthusiastically making out with her bike seat. I'm not saying I get it.
Leather fetish?
I kind of imagine, you see somebody really sexy riding a bike. They're so sexy you'd want to do things to their bike seat. That's kind of how I took it. I mean, not me personally, but I get it. So we then see a man getting pleasure from sniffing a bra, which in 2022, that's actually pretty tame and common. People buy used bras for that purpose. We see two men
Did
sniffing.
not know that.
Oh yeah, man! Socks, underwear. It's a
Oh,
market.
I guess I knew that. Like in Japan, they have like the vending machines with. Okay, yeah, I knew that. I'm not a square, Anthony. I know.
So we see two men sniffing a woman's armpit, and I guess it's supposed to be a big deal that her armpit's not shaved. But honestly, it's the 70s. That's kind of like, we kind of have this impression of women in the 70s, especially if they're like not beholden to the normal societal rules. They're gonna let their hair grow a little bit. Razors are expensive, more so for women. So I'm right there with, and they're all enjoying it. So I love that. That's cool for them. Now then we then see a man getting burned by a lit cigarette, and he's rather enjoying it. That, once again, that's also a thing. So I kind of like, okay. Now, what gets me the most is that this man who's being burned by a cigarette, I believe he's being watched by a bunch of naked people who are in a humid pyramid formation, and they're just kind of enjoying what they are seeing. And I can't stress this enough. The show hasn't started. So it's like, that's for us, I guess. Or I don't know who that's for, but that's what
they're see. Just chilling. They're waiting for the show.
Yeah. Like, exactly. Like they're waiting for the show to start. They're, so it was very interesting. So now, after we see all of this, the show finally starts. After Mr. David has gathered a big enough crowd, he then ushers them into the tents where they're going to be seeing the acts of the Cavalcade of Perversion. The very first thing that the crowd sees, or shown rather, it's a naked woman sitting in a chair, drinking wine, and someone is taking up-close pictures of her kitty cat. And the crowd is disgusted. They show their disgust, and one woman even says, "She's a dyke. Look at her tattoos." I didn't know that's all it took. Miguel, is that all it took in the 70s? Like, you had tattoos. Queer.
I plead the fifth.
Okay. So as this specific act is coming to an end, we see a different member of the cavalcade walking around shouting, "Cheeseburgers, cheeseburgers, get your cheeseburgers here, only $1." No. No, you do not want cheeseburgers from these people. Also, $1 in 1970 is $7.13 today. That's a lot for a cheeseburger at a carnival.
Wow.
I'm not doing that.
Well, like, I mean, it's like if you go to the theater and you first of all, do never buy a hot dog at the theater. But if you were to buy a hot dog at the theater, like, and then I have to say that the Seinfeld episode where Kramer buys the hot dog at the theater. I know it. But what I was going to say was, they swept these people in, right? And they didn't
Mm-hmm.
charge anything. So I was like, what is
Mm-hmm.
happening here? And then when they brought out the hamburgers, I was like, oh, okay. So this is how they're going to make their money. And
Mm-hmm.
then something else happened. It was like, oh, that came out of nowhere.
Right. It was very oh, so I'm not trying to buy a cheeseburger at a carnival like that. However, that it did make sense. I was like, oh, okay, they're legit. They're actually running a business here. So as gross as I found it, also she was selling cigarettes too. Who
Yeah.
doesn't want a good cheeseburger and a cigarette, right? So it's like, okay, I see you trying to work for your money. Also, you're putting on a show. Not my taste, but all right. I have no reason to be suspicious for.
Uh-huh.
So the next act we see, as Mr. David says, two actual queers kissing each other like lovers on the lips. Once again, they're actual queers. Now, as the crowd sees this, they are disgusted, more disgusted than they were with the previous act. They're just grunting and groaning and just talking about what a sin it is. Why can't they just like women? And that's it for that act. The next act, as Mr. David says, is a man going through what's called cold turkey, aka withdrawal. So they bring in this man, we watch him go through withdrawal, and then he fights two other people to get his fix. And I had a question about this because I saw him grab an eyedropper out of one of those people's hands who wheeled him out, and then he put the eyedropper to his vein and looked like he was injecting something. I don't know if that's how needles work in the 70s, Miguel.
Budgetary restraints, Anthony.
Right, okay.
Use your
I
imagination. All right.
no. So that was just something that caught my interest right away because I'm like, that doesn't look like any needle. Like this was
Yeah.
so after this act of this man getting his fix, we finally meet Divine. We cut to her looking in the mirror, adoringly looking at herself. And why the fuck not? As one should. Now, as she's looking for herself, she asks Ricky, can you get me something strong? I want something I can get off on. Which, once again, Divine, I'm already identifying with you. You love yourself. You want to get off. You're of the people, clearly.
After, I think this is my fifth or sixth Divine movie that I've seen. I know you
Mm-hmm.
talked about her. Well, Lady Divine in this movie, Divine in general. You've talked about them, and I just such a mood. Like she's like the epitome of fucking like self confidence and like just being a badass and knowing your worth and like doing what you want to do and being fucking
Mm-hmm.
fierce. Like I hate to use the word fierce. I'd never use the word fierce in my language, but the only thing coming up right now is just fierce. They're so fierce in everything they do, and I this has this depending on when if she was in Mondo Trasho as Divine, if they were in Mondo Trasho as Divine, I don't know. This is like the first time that we see the character of Divine, and I'm so here for it. Yesterday, in fact, after watching not female troubles, Pink Flamingos, I posted on Twitter. I
Mm-hmm.
said, from now on, I would just be responding in Divine gifts, and I felt that
Mm-hmm.
shit because yeah, man, there's just such a mood, and I'm so happy that now because I've known of Divine, but I
Mm-hmm.
never saw these movies, and just knowing them right now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just so happy for it. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to
No,
say
no,
it.
no. No, this was a welcome interruption because that brings me to something that I wanted to say earlier but forgot. So, for everybody listening, we're actually recording this episode on Easter Sunday.
Yes.
And that actually means a lot, and we will get into it later, but we're recording this on Easter Sunday. Not only that, it is also 1 week after the 50th anniversary of the theatrical release. Now, one of the reasons why I think it's important to mention that we're recording this on Easter Sunday is because after Divine passed away, Divine's fans would actually go to their gravesite and have sex there.
Oh
And
shit.
John Waters is quoted as saying, "I think they would have loved that." And so, so I think there's something that we're going to talk about a little bit later that I think Divine really would love to have been loved to. Divine would have loved to know that we're speaking about certain things that happened in this movie on Easter Sunday because there is some sort of religious part of this movie, and we'll get to it a little bit later.
Yes,
So
when we were talking about that, like, I cannot believe that it worked out this way, that we're talking about this movie on Easter Sunday, and there's no other person I'd rather be talking about Multiple Maniacs with than you. There's no other day that I'd rather be doing it than on Easter Sunday, and it's so fucking dope. So I'm happy about
Hell
that.
yeah. Hell yeah. So let's go back to Divine. We just met her. Also forgot to mention ass out. She's looking at herself in the mirror, ass is fully out
Uh,
because the
we actually don't see Divine first. We see Divine's ass first. Right?
yeah. So that's the kind of person you're dealing with. You know, you see them ass first, admiring themselves in the mirror. It just makes sense to me. So now, as Divine is admiring herself, and Lady Divine is admiring herself in the mirror, she's interrupted by David, and this absolutely pisses her the fuck off. It gets on her nerves because she was busy waiting for Ricky, member of the cavalcade, to bring her something strong. However, in Mr. David's defense, Lady Divine is the final act, and she's not ready. She's ass out looking in the mirror. Like she's the final act. It's almost her turn to go on.
Mhm.
Now, David, he's incredibly worried here because he wants to get the show wrapped up. He wants Divine to start performing, be ready to perform her act so they can get ready and go. Now, he expresses that he's incredibly worried that the cops are going to find them before they get a chance to leave the situation. This is the first red flag for me. Why are they worried about the cops? Also, why are you worried about the cops and this lady's over here ass out, not worried about the cops? What's going on here? So it kind of lets us know. It kind of lets us know where the two people are coming from. One of them doesn't care. One of them cares a lot. So Divine really couldn't give a fuck. Really not. Now, as she expresses to David, "You're worried about the cops. I'm chilling." The two are interrupted by somebody named Bonnie. Now, Bonnie's played by Mary Vivian Pierce, and she's kind of dragged in there, kind of like she seems as if she's an intruder, and she's yelling that she wants to audition. She wants to be a part of the show, and she actually tells Lady Divine that she was instructed by David to audition. Now, we don't know what happened there, but it's very obvious that Lady Divine wants nothing to do with this. In fact, Lady Divine is kind of insulted and calls Bonnie David's cheap little one night stand. And she demands that Bonnie gets taken out of the area immediately. And yes, oh, sorry, Miguel, go on.
I
Let me
did
know.
like how Divine sniffed out this bitch right away.
Mm hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
you can't pull a fast one on me. I already know you. Get the fuck out of here, right?
Mm hmm.
Because I was like, oh yeah, she's just a performer, just coming to perform. And then we're like, right now we're like, why is Divine being like this? But we see later on,
Mm
So
hmm.
yeah.
Mm hmm. Yeah. So Divine knows what's up.
Mm.
And she wants no part of it. Now, David and Divine, as Bonnie gets escorted out, they agree to continue their frustrating conversation at a later time because it's now time for the finale of the show. Now, as the finale, Lady Divine, she appears and she robs the patrons at gunpoint. This is typically what happens, and it's usually successful, and Mr. David really likes what they have going on there. However, at this point in time, Lady Divine is completely bored with this entire routine. And as they're going through the routine of where they would normally rob their patrons, Lady Divine, using the world's quietest gun, decides that she wants to shoot and kill someone. This is a complete derailing of their usual programming. Everybody in the entire situation is scared as fuck. So at this point, they decide that Lady Divine decides that they're going to kill everybody. They drug everyone, they rob everyone, jewelry, money, fur objects, as Lady Divine says, which I don't know what a fur object is. As someone who owns a fur, I know what a fur is, but I do not own a fur object.
Time out. You can't just say that and then move on. Are you telling me you own a fur?
It's a mink stole.
Speaking of Mink Stole, right? She's
Yeah,
looking for.
exactly. So it's a little scarf of fur.
Okay. And you also live in Arizona?
I do, yeah, and trust me, I will wear my fur in Arizona if the outfit's good enough.
Okay.
I carry a napkin to dab off the sweat. You know, I also have a little attachment that goes in my phone. That's a little fan.
For when you're wearing the Mink Stole?
Yeah, yeah. You plug in this little attachment to your phone, and it starts blowing air. It uses your phone's battery for power.
Nice. Okay.
I'm very about the dramatics. I will I will wear a fur even if it's against my better judgment.
Do you have a picture of you wearing the mink stole?
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna need you to drop that
For
later.
sure.
I would say
For
okay.
sure. For sure. So Lady Divine, she's bored with the routine because it's same old, same old. She decides that everybody, it's time for them to die. So she kills them all. Some of them get drugged to the point of dying. And this is where all of us, now everybody's, they're dying or dead. It's time to flee. The entire group flees, and we see them run into a forest of sorts, just away from the area where the show was actually taking place. Now, as they're all trying to escape, Lady Divine and one of the cavalcade members, Ricky, they're ahead of the group, and Mr. David is actually quite behind the group. He hears somebody yelling, "Mr. David, Mr. David, Mr. David." It's fucking Bonnie hiding in some foliage. Mr. David, knowing that he's fucked up, rushes over immediately. Rushes over immediately. He's like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" He's very scared. He knows that if Divine sees them talking that way, she's hiding in the bushes. He's being sneaky. He knows it means trouble for him if Divine sees what happens. So David tells Bonnie, essentially, get the fuck out of here before Divine kills them both, and that he's going to meet her at Pete's bar on Broadway at 2 o'clock. This is kind of also where we find out that Bonnie's not somebody who just met Mr. David. She claims that she would wait there 100 hours if it meant that she got to see him at Pete's bar. She would wait. And we kind of see that either she's devoted to him, obsessed with him, or stalking him, but it's a lot more than just she tried to audition for the show. Gives a little bit more credence to what Divine was saying, kind of, how dare you bring your cheap little one night stand here to me. So there's something more going on. So Bonnie agrees to meet Mr. David at Pete's bar at 2 o'clock. And just to reiterate, had David been caught by Lady Divine, he would have been killed right then and there. He's already on thin ice as it is for getting on her nerves.
One thing that I wanted to mention, or I think is
Mm-hmm.
worth mentioning, is the act that she says. So she says, she
Yeah.
always saying we could perform such acts. And it's like,
Yeah.
that is so weird. Stop saying that. But the act that she wanted to perform was some act that she had with her uncle. And she's like, actually, like me and my uncle have had relations for quite a while or something like that. I was like, whoa, what the fuck? Like later on, we come to find out that, like you were saying, that was all bullshit. Because she says, what were we going to do if she said yes? Like, where was I going to find my
Mm-hmm.
uncle? And he was like, oh, we would have gotten you an uncle or something like that. But yeah, also wanted to mention the acting in this movie is so bad.
Okay.
It's ridiculously bad. Like there's nobody in here who is a good actor. Like they keep stumbling their lines. Like they'll mess up the line, and instead of not using that take, they'll just let the person say the line over again, which is, I guess, a more natural way because that's how people actually speak. But
Mm-hmm. Listen to this unedited.
yeah,
That's how people
exactly.
speak.
But it's just kind of weird to see. But that goes along with your budget. But yeah, the acting is bad, and so you know if you haven't already seen this, or you go into early John Waters movies knowing that the acting is going to be bad. Like once he gets into the studio system with like Serial Mom or Hairspray, even like the acting, although is weird, it's not bad, right? So
Right, I agree. It's kind of awkward, but it seems natural. That's how people that like you said, that's how people speak.
it
And
is.
also because
Good.
oh no, go on. Sorry.
No, I was just say it does seem like a couple of friends got together and
Mm-hmm.
made this
Mm-hmm.
movie, which is literally what it was. And
Mm-hmm.
he likes to use people around him. He didn't get professional actors, and that's what you get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, I didn't even really have an issue with the acting itself because this movie is in 1970. That's 50 years ago. That's a very long time. So I was not expecting any Oscar-worthy performances. Actually, any of the movies that we watch, I'm not expecting anything that looks like good acting.
Anthony, Anthony.
I'm just saying the bar's low. I'm here to be impressed, and it can happen.
Okay. Well, like El Esqueleto de la Señora Morales, that came out in the 60s, and that was excellent acting.
Listen, I hate the 70's. The
Okay, all
60s,
right,
the
all right.
60s are great.
That's different.
The
Okay.
80s are great for what they are. The 90s are okay for what they are. But so,
Well, okay,
there's more.
let's go over this. What is your favorite decade in general, and then also for movies, and then horror movies because that's different as well.
Honestly, no. So for like anything really, music, style, movies, it's the 80s. I love the 80s.
Okay.
My mom loves the 80s so much that it rubbed off on me. And so like I love 80s slashers, I love 80s cheese, you know, like one of my favorite movies is Teen Witch. And you know that scene where they're like quote unquote rapping?
Top that.
Supersonic, idiotic, disconnected, not respected. Who would ever really want to go and top that? Such a waste of pretty face, but hanging in your nose space. I wish that you would take a look and really stop that. Top that. Well, stop that. I don't really give a about trying to top that. Top that. Stop that. I wish you finally take a real look and really stop that.
What's this?
Stop that.
What gives?
Stop that. I don't really give a about trying to stop that.
Top that.
Big deal.
Stop that.
Unreal.
You can try to, you blue.
I will make a fool of you.
Top that.
That's my fucking shit. Like that.
I love Teen Witch so much.
So yeah, I love Zelda Rubinstein. She's
Yes.
fantastic. Honestly, one of the characters in this movie looks like Zelda Rubinstein. I thought it was her at first. Edith is her name.
Oh yeah. Okay, I can see that.
So, so yeah, we're gonna continue. We're gonna continue on. So after the cavalcade escapes the murder scene, Lady Divine, Mr. David, and Ricky, another member of the cavalcade, they arrive at what we later find out is Cookie's apartment. Now, Cookie is Lady Divine's daughter. However, before we are introduced to Cookie, the three, Lady Divine, Mr. David, and Ricky, they arrive at the apartment and tensions are already high. Lady Divine is annoyed. She's upset with David. And the argument gets to a point where Mr. David tells Lady Divine, "You're wanted for murder now," and they usually catch murders. This is one of the most unpleasing things that Lady Divine can hear, because she immediately starts throwing questions back at him. The two of the main questions being, "Oh yeah, well how about you being an accomplice, and how about Sharon Tate?" Now this, for those of us who know, is an incredibly, what's the word, it raises alarms, because when she says how about Sharon Tate, I'm pretty sure all of us in the audience who are watching these movies, whoa, yeah, wait a minute, yeah, what about Sharon Tate, where is this going? Now the thing about this is Divine revealing to us that David knows what happened in the Sharon Tate murders? And what gets us even more confused as an audience, as a viewer, is he doesn't remember any of it. So with this, Divine says that she's going to hold him personally responsible if anything happens to her. Whether the cops find her, she ends up in police custody, because even though David doesn't remember, she's going to start remembering enough for the both of them if she ends up in the cops, with the cops. So now, Miguel, I want to know, do you know anything, like most people do, but what do you know about the Sharon Tate murders, Tate LaBianca, Manson murders?
Well, Anthony, thank you for that. I'm not big on true crime, but I did used to listen to a podcast that we won't name anymore. But
Who work with Amazon.
yeah, they went over it, and then I know there's a couple movies about it and all that, and I think the latest Quentin Tarantino one, I don't watch it. So sorry, Travis. Whatever that one was called,
Right. And Renee, they both love it.
went over that as well. But for those who don't know, the Tate LaBianca murders were a series of murders perpetrated by members of the Manson family during August 8th through August 10th, 1969. So that's important because we need to remember that this movie came out in 1970, but it was being filmed the tail end of 69. So the Tate LaBianca murders, the Manson murders, were very fresh on their mind. So when we're talking about John Waters and being king of like tasteless movies, that what people say, not my opinion, but like, if somebody were to make a movie 6 months later about some terrible school shooting here or something like that, you would think it's completely tasteless, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we're kind of seeing here, but that's what he's going for. He's it's transgressive. Like he's trying to push buttons and stuff like that. So that's what he was going for here. But anyway, back to the murders. They took place in August of 69 in Los Angeles, California, under the direction of Tex Watson and Charlie Manson. So the perpetrators first killed 5 people on the night of August 8th, not going into the 9th. They killed pregnant actress Sharon Tate and her companions, Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, Wojciech Frykowski, and Stephen Parent. And unfortunately, the baby did end up passing away due to asphyxiation in her womb. So yeah, that counts as a death as well. And then on the following evening, with Manson allegedly displeased about the chaotic operation of these murders, the family then also murdered supermarket executive Leno LaBianca and his wife Rosemary in the Los Feliz section of Los Angeles. So obviously there's been tons of podcasts and movies about the Tate LaBianca murders, the Manson family murders. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely look it up. But that's what they're referencing here with the Sharon Tate murders.
Probably one of the most popular true crime stories or most well-known true crime stories out there.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine, like, so the most recent Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie that came out, I do know that a lot of audiences were kind of turned off by the fact that one of the characters in that movie was a victim of a school shooting. So just the fact that even today people still try to do that, and we're like, oh, brother, fuck out of here. I can only imagine what it's like in the 70s. In the 70s, especially 1970.
Yeah.
It was probably a lot more distasteful.
Yeah. I haven't seen the newest Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so that's news to me. So that's kind of cool.
You're not missing out. You're fine. I didn't hate it, but you're not missing out. So what's happening now is Lady Divine is still threatening David, like, don't you dare get me involved with the cops, because then the cops are going to be involved with you. And they hear laughter and music starts playing, and Divine is delighted. She knows her daughter Cookie's home. So Divine stops this argument because she doesn't want to hear any of it. She's going to go talk with her daughter. Now we are introduced to Cookie. She's topless, doing probably the least sexiest pole dance you've ever seen in your entire life. However, I will say, she had some fucking moves. She looked cool. Sexy, no, but she looked like she was having a good ass time. Yeah. If you've ever seen any of the old Scooby-Doo cartoon episodes, that's how they danced. That's how they danced. That's all I can say about that. I can't describe it, but it just reminded me of,
I feel like I'm very brave because I just had to sit here and take this bullshit. Because you're not wrong, but still.
It sucks to hear. I get that. So Cookie and Divine, they catch up for a little bit. Hello, hey, how are you? What's up? And Cookie introduces us to her boyfriend, Steve. And she introduces him as a weatherman. Now, this Miguel, when I first saw how proud, or like kind of how proud Lady Divine was of Steve, I was really, 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 really confused here because I thought she was being rude at first. She says things like, thank you for your service. Thank you for keeping people like me and my kind safe. Things like that. Do you know what a weatherman is?
No, I don't actually. I'm very curious.
So I thought, are you being rude? Why are you saying this about someone who saves the weather? Like, thank you for your service, for keeping people like me safe. I didn't get it. But what I found out was that the Weather Underground was actually a radical left-wing militant organization, first active in 1969. So, yeah, so I don't know how they heard about it.
69, like he's on the cutting edge of like all like this. It's like he read a newspaper and like put all the quote unquote bad people into his movies. That's awesome,
right? And the thing is, like, Lady Divine is praising him, like, thank you for your work and all these kinds of things. So it's very so. The FBI, they describe the Weather Underground organization as a domestic terrorist group because they supported things like the Black Power movement and they opposed the war in Vietnam. So the Days of Rage was actually the first riot that they've ever had. And this was in October in 1969. And I wonder if this is the riot where Cookie met Steve.
Oh, shit.
Because that's where they met. They met at a riot. So I was wondering if that's where they met. So in the actual year 1970, the Weather Underground organization, they issued a declaration of a state of war against the United States government. So that's when they became known as the Weather Underground Organization, and they began to sort of, what's the word, disperse and disband when the war was over in Vietnam, 1973. So when the United States reached a peace accord in 73 with Vietnam, they started disbanding, and they were completely defunct by the year 1977.
Oh shit. Okay.
So if you're a part of that organization, you're a weatherman. Yeah.
Yeah, man, you're a fucking G if you're like you declare war against the United States. You know. That's
Right.
crazy.
So it was very, yeah. So when I found out who they were, it made a lot more sense about why Lady Divine was praising him.
Do you know what they stood for? Like, were they for like okay, yeah. So they were in support of the I was gonna say Black Lives Matter. That wasn't the Black Panthers. They were in the support of the Black Panthers. So that means that they have to be left. Yeah, you said left. So okay,
They were
all right.
left wing.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it had to do with, I didn't find out anything that they specifically stood for. Like, I didn't see if they had like a specific mission statement,
Yeah.
but it kind of just seems they were a militant organization who was like, hey, people deserve rights,
Yeah, that's cool. That's really
which
cool.
is enough to have the government hate you.
Yeah.
So
They're like, no, we don't want that.
yeah.
Stop that.
Right. So yeah, that's what a weatherman is. For those who didn't know, I didn't know. Now all of a sudden, Lady Divine's praises make a lot more sense.
But then this does make sense later on when they meet the cop, right? When Lady Divine and it's Mink Stole, they run into a cop, and the way that they react to him, they're like calling him pigs and like get the fuck out of here, like, and you know they're.
I think she said ACAB at one point.
If she didn't, we'll say it right now. ACAB, fuck 12.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so they talk about that, and it's to see that in a movie in 1970. You know, even in that interview that we both listened to with John Waters, he said even right now, to this day, you couldn't hear people saying "fuck pigs," "fuck the pigs," or "fuck 12" or ACAB in movies, but he was doing it 50 years ago. You know, and he had a character who was a weatherman. It's just man, it's so
yeah. So this is the inclusion of that kind of what makes me conflicted about something we see a little bit later, because this is clearly thought out. You know what you're doing, and you know what you're including, and like this is actually very, very, very great fucking stuff. Very. And even then, it's a piece that I left out, but there's a conversation that Mr. David has with Bonnie, where he tells Bonnie, no, when she kills a cop, that's the happiest day of her life. So like, not only has she done it before, but she enjoys doing it. So Lady Divine does not fuck with cops.
Yeah. And that runs throughout at least the first couple of John Waters movies, which I love.
Yeah. So it's I'm here for it. Like this movie has a lot to say, and it doesn't even explicitly say it, but I love it. Like I had to find out what a weatherman was.
Yeah.
So I think it's fantastic.
Well, that's what you get when you don't have a fully funded independent movie, right? If you go through a studio, this isn't happening. You're not getting the queer representation. You're not getting the talking about treating people the correct way or whatever. You're not getting any of that in studio film. You're getting it in this independently financed John Waters movie of 1970.
So Lady Divine finishes catching up with her daughter. You know, she starts talking to Cookie about how annoyed she is with David, how annoyed she is with him, and like he's getting on her nerves and things of that nature. And Cookie's like, just leave him, kill him, just get him out of here. So we know Cookie's on Lady Divine's side already. At this point in time, during this entire conversation, David has taken off from the apartment to go meet Bonnie at Pete's bar. Now, as Mr. David is with Bonnie at Pete's bar, they start talking about how they want to be together. Just basically that Lady Divine is ruining their lives, things of that nature. And somebody at Pete's bar is immediately suspicious of what's going on. And we see her pick up the phone, and we hear her say, Cookie Divine's home, please. And Edith, her name is Edith, and we know she's a real one. That's all I know about her. Because she calls Cookie's apartment knowing that Divine is going to be there. She tells Lady Divine, your old man is down here with another broad. And Lady Divine asks, a blonde? Edith confirms. Divine is pissed. So she had called Bonnie his Mr. David's cheap little one night stand. So kind of to hear the fact that, oh, so now you left my daughter's apartment to go see your other bitch. No, you have to die. Lady Divine does not like that he stepped out on her, and now she wants to kill him. So as Lady Divine leaves Cookie's apartment, she's heading to Pete's bar. She's gonna kill them both. Trigger warning for sexual assault. Lady Divine is raped by two glue sniffing members of the cavalcade.
Were they from the
And
cavalcade, really?
mm-hmm,
So
they were.
okay. Wow. That adds a level of I don't know, depravity, but just yeah, it's fucked. It's messed up to be like gang raped by two people that you know, you know?
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that Lady Divine was so pissed with, like one of the first things she said was like, if it wasn't for David, those two would have never thought that they could ever do that to me.
You're
So
right.
now she's
You're right.
yeah, so now she's even more pissed at David because of his like clearly he's stepping out on her. He doesn't want to be with her anymore. He's having his side piece come to audition to be in the show. So like she's being
Trifling.
Exactly. So Lady Divine is being disrespected in ways that even we don't know about, but that the cavalcade does. And so it kind of paints her as a target. Like we can do whatever we want with her.
One thing I wanted to mention here is that this sexual assault,
Mm-hmm.
it's I don't know if it's played for laughs is the right term,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but there's no audio, right? They just have
Mm-hmm.
the music, and it's like this wacky music, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you have
Yes.
this horrible sexual assault happening, 2-on-1 sort of sexual assault, and you're hearing this wacky, like I don't know, circus music or something,
Mm-hmm.
and that felt very wrong to me. But um, you know, it's difficult in a John Waters movie to know what was intentional. Like I
Mm-hmm.
intentionally did that so that you would. I don't know. Yeah, it's a lot of feelings going through my head that I can't kind of work it. There's also another sexual assault later on in the movie that's also played for comedic effect.
Yeah.
So it's
This
just
isn't even the first. This is not the first one.
yeah, yeah,
So if you haven't seen the movie,
yeah, exactly. So what did I mean? What did you think about that? Like how did that make you
honestly,
feel? When
I couldn't tell. Like I'd rather like because these people are so obviously smaller than her, but they totally subdue her,
yeah,
and it kind of looks as if she's not resisting. And also towards the end, she looks like she just had a good experience when we're done with that scene. Like, she's like hands in the air. She's like, oh, like it looks like she got.
I
It
think
doesn't look like she had a bad time.
I think that has to do more with the bad acting than anything,
Maybe okay.
because I think I mean she was assaulted, right? So
Yeah. Oh
there's
yes.
that. Yeah, I don't know. I think that had to do more with the bad acting and then the music. The music also makes it seem
Mm-hmm.
comical, but in no
It's like
way.
very Benny Hill.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's like John Waters going for the shock value or whatever, but regardless to say it happens and it's obviously it's messed up, but
Of course.
still trying to process it, right?
Right. Like I don't know what you were like. Basically, I don't know what he was trying to say.
Right.
I don't know what I was supposed to feel. And also because he says he doesn't know what he was doing. I don't know. Like in the interview that we saw, he says, I don't know what I was doing. So like I don't know if there's any meaning even put on that entire scene.
Was also 50 years ago, right? And so the view on
Mm-hmm.
sexual assault was different than
Mm-hmm.
how it
Oh
is now,
yeah.
you know? So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, John Waters is a great person, but he's not perfect. And so I think this
Correct.
is
Yeah.
kind of a misstep in his movies. Cause I don't think, I don't know. Censorship is bad, right? But at the same time, something should not be played for comedic effect. Some things should be not
Yeah.
taken lightly. And I think sexual assault is one of those things. So I don't know.
I agree with that because there is no joking, there is no comedic way to get raped. Like I so yeah.
Yeah, it's just all depends on what you think art is and all that sort of thing. So it gets
Mm-hmm.
wrapped up in that. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
No, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up because I don't know how to feel either.
Yeah,
So we mentioned earlier how Miguel told me, "Oh, I just saw that scene." This is the first of three. So there.
Oh fuck yeah!
So as Lady Divine is laying on the floor, contemplating what had just happened to her, she is visited by an image of the Infant of Prague, aka Child Jesus. Now, Child Jesus appears to her and leads her to a church, Saint Cecilia's, I believe it's called. They walked for what she said felt like blocks, and the entire time that they were walking together, the Infant of Prague was saying, "The more you honor me, the more I will bless you." And some way, somehow, Lady Divine takes this as a sign that killing David was approved by God. Why not? Child Jesus comes to you, that means what? It clearly means you're on the right path. So she enters the church that the Infant of Prague led her to, and she enters with some sort of like uncertainty, like she really doesn't know what she's supposed to be doing there. So she finds herself in a pew, and as she said, she doesn't really know how to pray. So she's remembering what Bible stories she could. The first story that she remembers is Jesus having 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish and having to feed an entire group of people. And that was not nearly enough to feed those people. So what Jesus, in the story, what Jesus did was he made that bread enough for everyone to eat. He made those fish enough for everyone to eat. But in Lady Divine's imagining of the situation, Jesus churns the 5 loaves of bread into several loaves of store-bought bread, and he churns the he churns the 2 fish into several cans of tuna, and then we're allowed to witness this feast of starving people eat the tuna and bread, just as Jesus intended, right?
It's just efficient. You know that tuna's
Yeah,
gonna last longer.
so this kind of gives us a peek into the mind of Lady Divine, where like she might not have all the details, but she has the gist. Like, yeah, he made fish and bread into more bread and fish,
Mhm.
not cans of tuna and loaves of bread from not loaves of Wonder Bread, but you at least know what you're talking about. So what happens next is, as Lady Divine is praying, somebody walks into the church quite sneakily.
I cannot wait to hear you describe this, Anthony. I've been waiting for this.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you have to do this, bro.
Honestly, it's a burden I'm willing to carry.
Okay.
So we see Mink Stole, very nicely dressed. You kind of want to hang out with her and have a drink with her. That's how cool.
Classy lady.
Very, yeah, very. So she walks in, and she's immediately enamored by what she sees, which is Lady Divine being uncomfortable in a church pew, praying as best she can. And so Mink Stole, in her infinite wisdom, is like, you know what? I think I want me a piece of that. And so from behind the church, gets way closer to Divine, and eventually ends up in the pew right behind Divine. Now, because Lady Divine thought it would be the most appropriate and polite thing to do because she's in a church, she moves over to allow Mink Stole to sit right next to her. And even though, as Lady Divine says herself, she's not really one for lesbianism, but there was something about this one, just something totally encapsulating about this person she allowed to sit next to her. As Lady Divine says, she tried absolutely everything she could do to repel Mink Stole's advances. And this includes doing nothing and letting it happen. That's about all she did.
So it's important to keep in mind that she had just survived the sexual assault. That she goes to this church. Then Mink Stole comes on to her, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm down." Like this one she's ready for, right?
Yeah, which that's we could have a whole conversation about how consent works.
Consent,
and
that's the word I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah, which is totally great. This is for me one of the great parts of this movie, because despite where they're at, they're in a church. They're like, yeah, let's do it. Why not? So what happens is Lady Divine says Mink Stole says the 7 most important words to me that led to the most fantastic sexual experience of my life. And those words are, think of the Stations of the Cross.
Happy Easter.
Huh? Happy Easter. Yeah, Happy Easter. Think of the Stations of the Cross. And as Lady Divine thinks of the Stations of the Cross, she is absolutely ass blasted by Mink Stole's crucifix. And Lady Divine is enjoying it. Mink Stole is enjoying it. We're seeing Jesus being crucified, and So in between shots of Lady Divine getting ass blasted, we're seeing Jesus being crucified or tortured, or having his face rubbed with the shroud, and then his face showing up
Uh-huh.
in blood in the shroud. And before I get into my serious thing, Miguel, I'm gonna put it on you. I don't get it. Is there more detail you would like to give the people, or do you have a take on what this scene is supposed to be?
Yeah, so there's actually historical precedence for this when we're talking about the Stations of Christ. No, man, there's nothing. He just wanted to see Divine get fingered in a church. That's all, and I'm fucking here for it. I fucking love it. This
Now,
was brilliant. Like when I tell you that this was an extended scene, this
mhm.
was an extended scene. 5 to 10 minutes, would you say?
Yeah.
5 to 10 minutes of Divine orgasming and moaning, and they were in an
Mhm.
actual church. They got permits
Mhm.
for to be in an actual church. And it wasn't a decommissioned church; it was an actual church. This is the most gangster shit that's ever been put on film, right? So it's a like 5 to 10 minute scene of her getting fingered, ass fingered,
Mhm.
in the pews of a Catholic church with
Mhm.
a rosary, like
Candles lit in the background.
candle, fucking brilliant. Like I just one of my favorite scenes in movies in cinema history. And we saw this for the first time together. Well, not together. I
Mhm.
haven't seen it, and neither have you. And so I fucking love it. I love what he's going for. It means absolutely nothing. It doesn't bring anything to the plot other than bringing Mink Stoll and Divine together. But yeah, man, it's just fucking amazing. Just amazing. Like,
Oh, I was gonna say this is a very My Horror Confessional scene. Like if My Horror Confessional had a mission statement, it's Divine getting ass fucked with a crucifix.
yeah, I don't know what that means, but I'm happy for it. I'm proud of it, man. That's good.
I don't
Well,
know. I love dirty things going on with religious iconography.
yes,
Like
yes,
you
exactly.
have for your My Horror Confessional, you have an upside down cross that looks like
Yes,
a neon porno
you're
sign,
right.
and it literally feels so fucking sinful, but I love it.
Yes, that's right. Okay, I know what you mean now. Yeah, yeah. It's. I mean, this scene, like, it's uncomfortable. Like, I'm not gonna say it's not.
Hmm.
I'm not gonna say I had like an ass blast watching it, but because
Not
like
even half ass blast.
not even half as because I was watching it upstairs in my office, and my wife and her friend were downstairs, and like everything reverberates when you're upstairs. So like I had to put it down real quick. I put that shit down because it was like I was like sweating. I'm like, Jesus Christ! Like this is a movie from
Clutching your
1920.
pearls.
Yes, but like this is a 70-year-old movie, 50-year-old. This is a 50-year-old
Hmm.
movie
Hmm.
that's making me feel uncomfortable and squirming in my chair
Yeah.
because John Waters and Divine and Mink Stoll had the balls, had the ovaries to just fucking go for it, right? They fucking did it, and they weren't.
They had the reproductive organs to
Yeah,
do.
yeah, man. Like I cannot say enough how much I love that this was in here. The scene itself is uncomfortable as shit. It's all but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Like, how did you feel? Like, where I was like, I literally like I was getting hot. I was like, oh fuck.
So, see, that's the thing. I don't know how to feel because I love it and I hate it.
Yeah,
I love because the church is not perfect, not at all. So I love seeing dirty things happen in a church because it's like you're just like everybody else. This kind of shit still happens. So like I love that someone had the balls to sort of think that, well, why can't I do this? And I can't really explain it. I loved it. I just loved it. Seemed like a spit in the face to people who are religious when like you really
which I'm
shouldn't
always
be.
down for.
Yeah, like honestly, you really. I could talk about religion. Like you probably shouldn't really be a fanatic when it comes
Yeah,
to your religion. It makes no sense. Like your God wouldn't even want that. He has
or
things to do. They have
yeah,
things to do.
or maybe you shouldn't be offended that this is happening between two consenting adults
That too.
when the church has been covering up child molestation by priests for
Hmm.
literally since the 50s. So
So,
yeah, to save
yeah,
your self-righteousness or something else, right?
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So now here's what I'll start off by saying. we live in the year 2022, and as a gay person, when I think back about 50 years ago, I think, oh man, they could call me a fag and beat me up, and they'll never see a day of jail time. In the year 1970, I could only imagine what it's like for them to think about 50 years ago. Like in 1970, being a gay person, what's their thought process? Like, oh, damn, the people who love you, like, if you're in 1970, you could think, like, oh, damn, 50 years ago, the people who loved you could take you off to an institution where they're going to fill you with electroshocks in hopes that it takes the gay away. And you might die, or they might pierce a piece of your brain with a lobotomy, but like they love you and they want you to be normal. So like I can only imagine what the people in the 70s had to fear in regards to what it's like being gay in that time. So I say all that to say, I think my opinion of this scene, it's very 2022. I think that I'm kind of not capable for appreciating the scene for what it is. However, I think I'm definitely trying, because my initial thought is I don't like sex being used for shock value.
Mm-hmm.
But the more and more I think about it, when you see a woman getting fucked in the ass with the crucifix in a church, it kind of makes two women holding hands at a restaurant seem a lot less fucked up. You know,
Yeah.
it kind of makes like two men holding hands at the carnival not seem like that big of a deal. So I I kind of think that does this scene, this incredibly intense scene, does it lay the path for acceptance? Like, hey, at least we're not doing that. Or is it proof for bigots and like, hey, do you see what they're doing over there? They defile our churches and they make a mockery out of all this. And honestly, maybe it's both. Maybe it's neither. Maybe John Waters just wanted to have that scene in the church.
Yeah.
I'm not capable of knowing if this scene does more harm than good, but it was 50 years ago and I can't put myself in a place where I can understand it. You know, John Waters literally has to tell me himself what he thinks about it in order to know, for me to know what's going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I am not a member of the LGBTQIA community, so please take everything I say with a grain of salt. I'm probably going to fuck shit up, but I do know I believe in 1969 was the Stonewall riots, right?
Yes,
So
yes,
it's
yes, yes.
June of '69. So they were making this movie around the time of the Stonewall riots. Which would you care to share what these Stonewall riots were?
I'm gonna be honest. I don't have all the exact details, but the Stonewall Inn, I believe, was a popular gay club in New York City. Um, this was a club where gay people, trans people, typically gay and trans people of color, or queer people of color, we can leave it at that, queer and black people of color, they would have a good time, get away from the streets, because you need a fucking space away from the streets. Like you just need it. And what would happen is quite frequently the cops would come in, they'd bust some people up, they'd take a bribe and go leave. And that's if they weren't taking people to jail and then brutalizing them there away from the eyes of everyone else. So the night of the Stonewall riots was they all decided that they had had enough and they fought back against the cops. Now I don't know how long it lasted, but I do know nobody died. However, I do know it is one of the most pivotal moments in queer history, because that is one of the first recorded events where queer people or people who felt othered were standing up for themselves against the government, against the police state, against people who were allowed to do whatever they wanted simply because the people that they believed in, the people that they elected into office, said, this is what's wrong, this is what's right, you're allowed to do this, they aren't even people. And so the Stonewall riots was a culmination of like, fuck you, we're literally here minding our own business and you have a problem with that. And they they were no longer okay with that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I knew of the Stonewall riots and I knew when it happened and you know, what kicked it off and all that, but I didn't know a lot of the background on it. So thank you for sharing. But I think that again, it just shows how brave or how bold he is. Around the same time that this is happening, the Stonewall riots, he's writing it into his movie. Not the riots per se, but like gay and lesbian acts, right? And then also, I just wanted to touch on the religious imagery or the symbolism of what they're using. Like, so religion has been used to oppress minorities and also gay people for eons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And ever since its inception, right? And then in this scene, they take the symbolism, the highest symbolism of the church, which is the cross, the rosary, and
Mm-hmm.
use it to fuck another woman in the ass. So it's like, fuck you, fuck your religious imagery, fuck everything that you're doing to us. We're gonna take your symbol, and we're gonna use it to fuck a girl in the ass, right? It's amazing,
Yeah, no, hey, fuck yeah. It's like, well, you use religion to fuck women in the ass anyway. Why
right?
can't I use religion to fuck a woman in the ass? Damn, yeah, absolutely. I really like that because also it is, I think, I believe the crucifixion and the crucifixion of Jesus is his most popular story, right? That's his biggest tweet. That's his biggest. That's the biggest thing he ever
Oh man,
did.
yeah, man, that's what he's most known for. That's his number one
Yeah,
role.
it's the most viral. Yeah, it's the most
Yeah,
viral story.
yeah.
So, yeah, no, that's a really
It,
great point.
it, it's
I'm
his
glad you.
it's his Zola.
That's a story for another time.
That's the
But
right.
so after Divine and Mink Stole have this divine encounter, freshly invigorated by the passionate lovemaking, they introduce themselves to each other.
Yeah.
which which is uh, this is my favorite thing because that's the gayest fucking shit. You fuck and you suck, and then oh, my name's Anthony. Like, like I loved it.
Yeah.
So this is the point where they start getting to they start getting to know each other a little bit more. Mink Stole is like, hey, can I hang out with you for a little bit? Because like Mink Stole kind of understands Lady Divine is kind of a cool person, and honestly, Lady Divine, having bust the fattest nut of her life, was like, yeah, you can come, you can come around again. So this is where they get to talking, and Lady Divine lets Mink Stole know, like, hey, I'm actually on my way to go kill my husband, which is the first time she ever called him that. But Mink Stole was like, you have a husband? And to which Lady Divine responds, well, he's my boyfriend, but like he still has to go anyway.
Yeah.
And so Mink Stole is actually really, really, really enamored with the fact that Lady Divine is going to go kill him. And she asks Lady Divine, can I perform extreme no, she doesn't ask. She says, oh, I've always wanted to perform extreme unction on somebody. Like, and like she never really asked for permission. And also, I looked up what extreme unction means, and honestly, I was a little bit underwhelmed.
Please tell.
So it's something that happens. It's now called. It's a Catholic thing now called the anointing of the sick. It's something that's reserved for people who are incredibly near death. So it's kind of like giving them their last rites as they're dying, as they're about to die.
Okay.
But I don't understand why she was so horny for it.
Multiple maniacs, man. They're maniacs.
You know what? There are multiple maniacs. Well, the movie delivers. There are multiple maniacs.
It does feel like two like souls intertwining, just linking up, you know?
Mm-hmm,
It's like
mm-hmm.
when Dr. Dre and Tupac linked up, and they just linked up and they were down for that's what it felt like. They were just down for each other, you know? She's like, hell yeah, you
Chocolate
can
and
buy
peanut butter.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cocaine and waffles.
Upon letting Mink Stole know that she's about to go kill her boyfriend and his mistress, Mink Stole wants to tag along, which honestly, if you're down for me like that, fuck yeah, you can come along. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I just told you I want to kill people and you want to be there. I think I might have just made a friend.
She's a ride or die.
Yeah, absolutely. So what they don't know is that as they're having this conversation, David and Bonnie are actually plotting themselves to kill Lady Divine because that's the only way that they're going to be able to be together without Lady Divine sort of coming to kill them.
Right.
Like that's the only way they can be together without Lady Divine killing them.
You don't break up with Lady Divine.
Exactly.
She kills you.
Exactly. Like if you tell her you want to quit, she's gonna shoot you, so you're fired.
Yeah.
That kind of deal.
Exactly.
Like, so the plan is to have Bonnie shoot Lady Divine upon David's signal. Now, this is something that Bonnie agrees to, not only so she can show David how much that she loves him, but also because David's a fucking bitch and can't bring himself to do it. Lady Divine even mentions this later, knowing what a full bitch David is. So David tells Bonnie that Lady Divine is wanted for so many murders, the police won't care who kills her because she's just a wanted criminal. It doesn't matter who killed her. We finally got her off the streets. Fantastic.
Right.
So when Lady Divine and Mink Stole go to Pete's bar. Can I rewind a little bit? So Lady Divine was on her way to Pete's bar. She gets raped by the two members of the cavalcade, sees the baby Jesus, gets walked to a church, gets ass fucked by a crucifix, meets Mink Stole, and now she's on her way back to go to Pete's bar to kill David. She's had a big day. She's had a very big day.
It's been a couple hours, right? It's
Yeah. So by the time she gets to Pete's bar, David and Bonnie are gone. She speaks to Edith. Edith is like, no, they left a couple hours ago. They rented a room upstairs, but now they're gone. And Divine gets a little pissy. She's like, oh, are you lying to me? Are you trying to screw me over? And Edith, in the most realist of the real, I called you, didn't I? Why, like, why am I going to lie to you? I literally told you your fella's here with another broad.
yeah.
I want you to find him. So I thought that was really cool because real ones don't get that many scenes. And Edith is a real one.
Edith Massey is another one of those people that shows up a lot in John Waters movies, and she's so eccentric. Like, yeah, I really enjoy her. She's got
Yeah.
a role in Pink Flamingos that is just so fucking bizarre.
Okay.
I recommend it to you.
I'm down. I will watch it.
All right.
I will watch it. You heard it here. So at this time, when Lady Divine and Mink Stole are talking with Edith, Mr. David and Bonnie, they return to Cookie's house, and their full intention is to kill Divine. Instead, he finds Cookie and the other cavalcade performer, Ricky, just chilling, laying in the living room. An argument ensues between the three, and pretty much insults are exchanged, and Cookie tells David, like, my mom doesn't even want you here. You're only here because of my graciousness. Like, man, you need to kick rocks. Like, put an egg in your shoe and beat it. Like, you're only here because of me. And
Because it is her apartment. Who the fuck are you
It's
to
her
raise
apartment.
your voice in my apartment? The fuck?
my brother raised his voice to me the other day, and I was like, who?
Whomst?
Like, no. So yeah, she's not here for it because why should you be? This fucking man. So the argument heightens between all three of them and Cookie. Honestly, earlier I didn't mention it, but Mr. David kind of mentions to Divine how she's fucking up her daughter. But we see in this instance where Cookie was like, you know what? I'm not about this. I'm gonna get out of here. You can be miserable by yourself. So like we see her taking the role of the bigger person while clearly Mr. David still wants to argue. So like everything he said about Cookie being a shitty person or like not being grown up right, I see it as kind of thrown out the window because like you don't know what you're talking about. Clearly Cookie is as good a person as she can be.
Right.
And it's something that I truly appreciated. So as Cookie leaves, she puts on a shirt. She's like, I can't believe I'm being treated like this in my own home.
Because she is naked, because it is the 70s and it's a John Waters movie, and like people are naked.
See, my thing is, it's her house.
Yeah.
You can be topless. If you can't be topless at your house, what the fuck is going on? You pay rent there.
Yeah.
So Bonnie, completely shitting the bed, kills Cookie because she was expecting Lady Divine to be the one who walked outside the door. Which honestly, Bonnie, fuck you, you stupid fucking idiot. Like, Lady Divine and Cookie look totally different. If you think you had any justification in killing her, you're wrong and you're dumb. And that's all I'm going to say about that for now.
Well, just goes to show like how is it Mr. David? Yeah, right. What an idiot Mr. David is because he knew that Lady Divine wasn't there. At the moment that he knew that she wasn't there, he should have gone out and be like, hey, we got to cancel it. She's not home right now. But he doesn't do that. It's so he's a fucking bumbling idiot, you know?
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Yeah, unfortunately she dies and she shouldn't have had to. I think that's the most like sympathetic death, in my opinion, anyway.
And then the dude that was with her, the other cavalcade guy who gets killed.
He called Mr. David a fag, so like,
yeah,
you can get it. You can die. I don't go fuck. Homophobes can die if you didn't know. So
yeah.
So after this, what happens is Mr. David instructs Bonnie to tie up Ricky because he's now a witness. right? And they don't need any loose ends or what have you. And they both decide to hide Cookie's body. Now, just before, this is just before they're tying up Ricky, they're hiding Cookie. This is literally in the moments before Divine and Mink show up to the apartment. So to get herself hyped up for to get herself hyped up for David's murder, Lady Divine kills a cop who's talking shit to her and Mink. And this is where we see Lady Divine sort of not even disdain, but sort of like dislike, like, hey, you're a cop? How dare you approach me this way? And just kills him. And Lady Divine said ACAB. And I'm inclined to believe.
I am here for it. That's awesome. I love it.
And there's even a part of the exchange where she's like, hey, don't talk to me like that, pig, or I might start making a little bacon.
Well, because he was also a corrupt cop, because we saw him
Yes.
take a bribe, or not even request, like demand a bribe from the bar owner, Edith.
Yes, absolutely. Lady Divine gets herself hyped up, and once again, in the seconds before Lady Divine and Mink show up, David finds a newspaper. And this newspaper is the fucking most fantastic thing he could have ever seen, because this newspaper tells us who was captured for the Sharon Tate murders. The only name I know is Charles Manson, and the other name I know is Patricia, because as David says, I don't know, some girl named Patricia and some guy named Charles Manson.
Yeah.
So, I don't know the names, but I just know the overall story. But Mr. David, he finds the newspaper that says the murderers of Sharon Tate have been caught, and he realizes that Lady Divine has kind of been playing him this entire time, using his insecurities against him. This is something that bad people do when they're in proximity to people who are like alcoholics, people who like maybe black out every night, people who don't remember certain conversations. They use that to their advantage, and they blame them for certain things so they could use them for their own ends. Now, I don't know if Mr. David was an alcoholic, but it does seem like they all use drugs.
Yeah, that's true.
And and this is something that a very, very, very bad person will do, because it's like, well, you don't remember, let me fill in the blanks for you. And those aren't the appropriate blanks that are being filled in.
This cavalcade of perversion travels around the United States, and they could have been in California when that happened, and maybe they took acid, they tripped on something, and he didn't know what happened, and then she used that to her advantage. She gaslit him, basically.
Absolutely. Because the thing about that conversation that they have is David tells Lady Divine, oh, well, you were there too. And she says, but I didn't do what you did. So clearly he lost his memory at some point in time, and she was able to use that to her advantage.
Yeah.
So he kind of gets this relief, like, oh, I didn't murder Hollywood's prettiest girl. I didn't murder her baby. Divine has been lying to me the entire time. He gets this sort of relief. He doesn't get an opportunity to like relish in that, because Lady Divine has now arrived. So he just finds this out. Now she's here. Now, for me, what happens next is the funniest scene in the entire movie, because insults are being slung every which way direction. We have David, we have Bonnie, we have Mink, and we have Divine all in the same room. And Mink hates David and Bonnie. Bonnie hates Divine and Mink. David hates Divine. Divine hates David and Bonnie. So like they all have a reason to really hate each other. And because David finds out this is Divine's new piece, he then hates Mink. So like they all hate each other, and they're just flinging insults around. And like, I don't remember it word for word, but one of the funniest lines is when Mink Stole was like, Divine, I don't like how this fucking asshole is talking to me. Because like, it's just so funny to call someone this asshole while they're in the room with you. Like,
well, they both they're like, I don't have to sit here with this low class person being insulted. It's like, yeah, it was pretty good.
No, it's fantastic. And like, I just love, like, this is, to me, the arguments are the funniest part of the movie, because they seem so real and they seem so funny and they seem personal.
Yeah, and imagine being so rude to somebody in their face. Like that's the most horrifying thing. Like me, I have social anxieties. I'm like, oh Jesus.
No, like somebody accidentally yelled at me yesterday, and I was like, we need to talk about this. Like, I was very upset. So,
You low
like, for some
class motherfucker. How dare you?
exact. So, like, for these actual insults to be flung around, it's very like, to me, it's the funniest part, and I think it's kind of looping us up for what's happening next. So they're all flinging insults with each other. Lady Divine decides that she's going to go into the kitchen to grab something. And what happens next is Lady Divine comes out of the kitchen and then continues to fling insults at David. Now, when we kind of zoom out a little bit, we see that Lady Divine has a knife. She's holding a knife behind her back, and it's like Lady Divine holds a knife because she's ready to use it.
Mm.
That's why she has it.
Yeah.
And she continues to insult David, and Bonnie's not having it. She's upset, distraught, annoyed, disgusted, and decides that she wants to then shoot Divine. And Divine was like, "What the fuck?" And then immediately starts brutally stabbing her. One of the things that she tells David is like, "Oh, you know she had that gun there. You know she was trying to kill me. I bet that's because you're too much of a bitch to do it yourself." So like she's completely like either after she killed or while she's killing Bonnie, still letting David know what a total piece of shit he is.
We never talked about how Bonnie still calls him Mr. David and how weird that was. And like, she thinks that she has this, the upper hand on Divine with this gun. But yeah, you're right. Like, I didn't notice the knife right away. And then when she brought it out, I don't even think we very much see it shown. We just kind of like, we just see the motion like in Halloween in the first movie. You don't really see it. But yeah, man, it was because this was my first time seeing it. I was like, damn, is this a horror movie? Like this has mostly been like a weird bizarro crime drama sort of thing, not really a horror movie. And then when I literally was texting you to be like, dude, we may need to think about possibly doing another movie because I'm not seeing the horror part here, even though it's in everybody's top horror list. And then we got to this scene. I was like, oh, okay. All right, cool. I feel better.
Yeah, right. And that's actually something that I still struggle with. This calling this movie horror. I don't think I can. But back to the murder. So Lady Divine is murdering Bonnie, Mr. David's mistress. Were you gonna say something?
I was gonna say, look at this gatekeeper over here.
No, I'm just saying. Listen. It is what it is. I don't think it's horror, but
okay.
I'm not saying it's not.
Okay.
But so Lady Divine turns her attention to Mr. David and completely eviscerates him, takes out all of his organs and starts eating them. We see here that she becomes even more frenzied by this and just going to town on these organs.
How is this not horror? Right here. This is horrific. This is cannibalism.
It's a thing. People eat people.
Okay.
I don't know. I guess because it's not consensual, that's horror.
Your 70s bias is showing, Anthony.
I mean, listen, it's scary, but like I like zombie movies. So
was that I don't think zombies are horror. I don't really.
Oh, you know what? Getting eaten alive is horrific.
Yeah, there you go.
He was dead.
Yeah.
So Lady Divine has just killed David. She's taken his guts out, and now she's eating his internal organs. And we see her become even more frenzied. Now, as this is happening, Ricky suddenly escapes his binds that Bonnie and David had tied him up with. Now, this is so absolutely surprising to Mink, she shoots him in shock. This sets Divine over the edge again. Because it's quite clear that Ricky is one of her favorites. Mink just shot him. Now Mink is on her shit list. Mink kills Ricky, and then Divine kills Mink. This
it's fucked up. Fucked up,
yeah.
Divine.
Yeah. But, it's kind of that like, hey, I've known him longer, and you just kill him like that? Now I'm going to kill you. So Divine kills Mink, and upon killing Mink, she finds her daughter's body. And this just, even already there's adrenaline, there's tension, there's cannibalism. There's murder of the person who just made you bust the fattest nut. There's a lot going on. There's
She
a lot
was
going on here.
she was sexually assaulted before that. Like, this is a lot
Yeah,
of shit.
that too.
She has
So
finally snapped.
exactly, I would have snapped a long time
A
ago.
long time ago, yeah.
So after Divine kills Mink, she then starts looking at herself in the mirror. And she starts saying these things like, "Oh, Divine, I love your twisted mind. I love you so much. Oh, you're still the most beautiful woman in the world." And she accepts herself as a maniac. Now, this scene for me, it's a little bit important because this scene kind of mirrors the scene where we first meet Divine, where she's looking at herself in the mirror, adoring herself. And now we see her doing it again, and she's doing it in a more heightened sense. She's admiring herself not only out loud but also proudly. And it's like I said, it's mirroring the way that we first meet her. Any
Literally.
thoughts? Yeah.
That's a great point. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's how we met her, and that's how we're like, once she's finally snapped, of course she would go to, it feels like mirrors are where she goes to get her self-confidence and everything back. And so when she snaps, the first thing she goes to look for that confidence back, that grounding effect, is a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, she's like, Divine's look right now, fucking amazing. Fucking
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Like that.
Maniac.
The look on her face is just deranged. And I think this is
Mm-hmm.
probably some of Divine's best work here, because a lot of it is over the top. A lot of John Waters' actors are over the top, and most of the time it doesn't call for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're just in a regular ass scene in a trailer in a
Very.
room talking, and you're like, over the top, doesn't call for it. But here it calls for it, and she nails it.
I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah.
So following this, Lady Divine is now exhausted by this entire ordeal, and she collapses on the couch. She's trying to catch her breath a little bit, kind of reeling from the events that just happened. Now enter Lobstora, the giant lobster.
Thank you for naming her. Thank you. Thank you for putting some respect on her name, or his name, their name.
Yeah.
We're not
Now-
out here misgendering lobsters. Okay?
Listen, lobsters are food. That's all. Never had one, but
Me neither. I don't fuck with it. It's
What?
it's a cockroach of the sea. I'm good.
I thought those shrimp was.
Oh, it's all that shit, man. I don't want to fuck with none of
Oh.
that stuff. Bottom feeders, man.
I love shrimp so much. I think I might want to eat cockroaches. All I'm saying.
It's all,
I think I'd try it.
you would. Holy shit, dude. Oh, like a deep fried one?
Yeah, no, I would. Oh, absolutely, I would try it.
I love that for you.
So, yeah, don't want that.
Don't
for
want
me.
that for me.
No. Yeah. So now, I don't know.
This?
Listen, I did a Google, and apparently male lobsters have 2 dicks, but I don't know why.
Didn't we learn in the Discord this week what the term was for 2 dicks? Did you read that part?
No.
I think it was Kent and TJ were talking about it for some reason.
The fucking veterinarian would know, right? Oh my god.
For 2 dicks. I'm Googling it. It's going to be in my search history. I don't care. Diphalia.
Biphalia.
Died with a
Ooh.
D. Diphalia.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, the die.
Yeah. So we learned that through the Podmortem Discord that things that have 2 dicks are diphalia. It's called diphalia. It's a genetic condition. We're not lobster shaming here.
No, hell no. We're lobster. What's the opposite word of shaming?
Encouraging, celebrating.
Yeah, you got 2. What the fuck? So I'm gonna, in a total moment of dumbness, I just got to admit, why?
You're asking me, Anthony. You're asking me.
I'm asking the general public why.
Acid.
John Waters doesn't even know.
He doesn't. It's acid is the reason why.
Acid, and it makes sense.
Because
Watch the John Waters interview on the Build series, just so you can understand just exactly how much this person doesn't know what's going on.
Right. And he was just making movies and tripping on acid and doing whatever the fuck he wanted to do. That included having a
Mm-hmm.
giant lobster sexually assault Divine for the second time. Well, not second time by a lobster, but second time
In
again.
this movie.
Yeah, again, another part of them treating sexual assault for comedic value, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate. But I mean, this is so fucking ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anybody could take. I mean, yeah, you could take it. You could be offended by it or whatever. You have your own like experiences, right? But I'm just saying, this seems it's so fucking comical. Like it's absurd, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Mm-hmm.
huge lobster. Like it fills the room.
Mm-hmm.
I can't stress this enough. It's like 3/4 of the room, and it's so fucking
Mm-hmm.
cheesy, and it costs like less than $100 for them to build, and like
Oh
you could
my
still
god.
you could see the metal rod that they use to like make it move and all that sort of stuff.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
And again, this
Like,
is another extended scene. It's like a 5-minute scene by Divine getting sexually assaulted by a lobster, and it's she's this time though she is screaming. They don't put music over it,
mm-hmm.
right? So she's screaming the whole time. It's
Mm-hmm.
there's no reason for it, Anthony.
Yeah.
Other than to push boundaries and shoot a movie while you're tripping acid. You know,
I like to, in my opinion, I would just like to think that maybe this is it's a scene that's so shocking that maybe when you see gay or trans people just living their lives, this shouldn't be reason for you to clutch your pearls, because there's a bunch of other weird shit going on that you don't need to be focused on. Two consenting adults trying to live their life, trying to live that white picket fence dream. Like that should not be cause for alarm.
yeah.
Not when things are going on in churches and lobsters are out here fucking trying. It was the 70s, eh? Were there lobsters going on? I don't know. It was 50 years ago. That was before any of our time. After experiencing this horrific event, Divine leaves Cookie's apartment. Granted, she's clearly in a distressed state. She doesn't want to be there, and why should she have to be there? She steals a car, Grand Theft Auto style, just like, hey, let me in the car. And she takes the car and she's wandering the city trying to kill anybody that she absolutely can. Quite literally, she's foaming at the mouth. She approaches random houses. She looks to see if there's anyone nearby who she can kill. And she actually comes across a couple who are making out in a car in a driveway. As she's approaching the couple with an axe in hand, I kind of get the vibe of the psycho killer approaching the couple at Lover's Lane
Yeah.
making out.
Definitely.
So
The urban legend.
I was wondering, I was wondering if John Waters kind of had took any influence from that, because that's the exact vibe I got. Like
Yeah.
she's approaching this couple making out. I mean, they are in a driveway, but still,
It's like
let's make up point.
the house the town that dreaded sundown vibes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. A 70s movie I may or may not have seen. I hate the 70s. We don't know. No, it might have came out in 68.
No.
Know. So she forces the couple out of the car, and then she starts destroying the car, which I kind of wonder, just in a like filmmaker standpoint. Not that I'm a filmmaker, but I wonder like, what's your point with that? Because like I thought Divine would kill the people.
Yeah.
But she's destroying the car. It is what it is. She destroys the car. What were you saying?
Well, she's in a full manic state, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
like
Yeah, you're right.
she's gone off of it. She's just trying to. I don't know. I took it as trying to make destroy whatever she could. So I wanted to back up for a second.
Yeah.
Did you get any kaiju thing here? Okay.
So Divine destroys the car, takes another car, and then heads into the city.
Mm-hmm.
As Divine heads into the city, she makes her way into the streets, causing mass hysteria, attacking whoever she can. This causes whatever people who are around to run in fright. And she's chasing these people down the streets, down the busy walkways. And I totally get...
Yeah, and looking absolutely
get
terrifying.
kaiju vibes.
Yes, yeah.
Because she's like snatching and just trying to get whoever's closest to her. And so this movie takes place in Baltimore. I definitely got monster running through the city trying to destroy it. Very Godzilla, Very that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, and then also, you're going to get to it. Who shows up to stop her?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, that's so Divine's running through the streets, terrorizing the public, foaming at the mouth, and she's gunned down by the National Guard. And the the mob the mob that she was chasing then becomes the mob who's viewing her takedown, and she gets taken down as America the Beautiful plays. Now, this is the end of the movie. However, this is very, very reminiscent of those monster movies where here comes the army, here comes the National Guard to save the
Yeah.
day, to kill the monster. And it kind of makes me think like, oh, is the monster queerness? Is the monster otherness? Granted, she did have a bit of an ordeal, but honestly, in the living a queer life, you're gonna go through these things. You're gonna go through you're gonna go through sexual assault. You're gonna go through the people who you love being killed, whether that's because a man hooked up with them, like, oh, they tried to trick me, and so they kill them, or because just being queer and poor is kind of a dangerous life to lead.
Yeah.
And so to me, I said culmination like 3 times, Jesus Christ. But this is a culmination of all of those stresses that can happen to a queer person. And so you take to the streets and you try to make people feel as bad as you've been made to feel.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, I'm not saying I condone it, but I'm saying I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, that's great points. I hadn't thought of that I hadn't thought of it in the terms of, gayness or queerness.
Mm-hmm.
But that does lead me to the question I've been wanting to ask, or the topic I want to discuss is John Waters is obviously a gay man, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he has a lot of queer elements in his movies. In fact, a lot of them revolve around queerness, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that he uses the terminology, the slurs against gay people in his movies, and also the representation of gay people, it feels to me like he's holding up a mirror to society and saying, this is who you think we are. There's nothing I can do to stop you from thinking that we are this. So you know what? I'm going to one up you, and I'm going to go fucking so far to the left, or, I'm going to go so past far the line of decency that just to fucking shock you, because it's like respectability politics, right? Even
Mm-hmm.
if I was the
Mm-hmm.
most quote unquote respectable person, you still would think you probably call me the F word, the F slur behind my back,
Mm-hmm.
or something like that.
Absolutely.
So it's him holding up a mirror to society and saying, look how ridiculous you are. This is how you think we are. And don't you feel ashamed for that? Don't you feel ridiculous for that? That's how I took it.
I love that.
Because to take it any other, well, not to take it any other way, like other people can take it how they want, but like
Miguel takes it any other way. What the
any other way.
fuck?
I got a lot of holes.
Whoa.
I was about to count all the holes.
They called Miguel Swiss cheese in college.
Yeah. And it wasn't just because of the smell. So, but
are you happy with yourself?
I am pretty proud of that.
Okay.
I mean, I made you gag. All right, there we go. So, so the thing about it is like, if it's not that, then it's like, I don't know, like just like how black people use the N word, gay people
Mm-hmm.
or queer people use the F word or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that, that's fine. But it makes me wonder about like some of the, how they're portraying gay people as, like, if it's not holding up a mirror to society, and if it's just what we're seeing here, then it could also be like, hey, you know what? Like, there's bad gay people too. Like, it's just like nowadays, like there could be black villains. We've had black superheroes. We need more black superheroes, whatever. But we also want black villains and that sort of thing. And then maybe that's what he was doing here too. Is like, yeah, we're gay, but we also want to be bad guys sometimes. So
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
there's a couple of different ways you can view it. But yeah, just I think I love what he did with this movie.
And to go back to what you were saying about holding a mirror to society, I honestly think that's what not talking about it now. I didn't think this earlier, But like in the beginning, when those unsuspecting bystanders were subjected to the cavalcade of perversions, it's literally holding up a mirror to society.
Mhm.
Like there's literally a woman having a good time drinking some wine, getting pictures of her kitty cat taken. That's her business.
Yeah.
And like you're seeing it. But oh, she's a dyke. Look at her tattoos. And then to make them even more disgusted at two consenting men making out, it's like, man, you're really disgusted about people who don't matter to you having a good time on their own. And so this to me leads to the point where gayness or queerness is such a monster or such a monstrosity that it's worth calling the National Guard for to eradicate. And like I think it's showing society like, hey, I just want you to know I'm a guy with a dick who likes sucking dick, but you think you can call the National Guard for them to like stop what's happening here? Understand it's an extreme overreaction when like you literally could just go to the store and mind your business.
Right. And what we were talking about earlier, like the Stonewall riots, they did call the National Guard on them, and nobody was killed, thankfully, but like a lot of people were beat up and like tortured and like just treated
Brutalized, yeah.
brutalized, right? And so like that's what they showed here. Like they showed the National Guard, yeah, and it looks cheesy and it's campy. Like this is camp, right? We haven't even
Yes.
talked about camp. This is
How
like
delightfully camp.
John Waters equals camp, right?
Mm-hmm,
But this is just a camp version of that, you know. So they do it by having Divine turn into a kaiju monster and like terrorizing the people of, you know, the fine, good, upstanding, you know, white citizens of this downtown Baltimore with her queerness, right? Because it's you know that's what she's doing. She's terrorizing them, and then the National Guards get called on them, and it's laughable these wooden guns that they have, and they're just like moving them back and forth like this, and they're poking her.
Those fucking Red Ryder BB guns from A Christmas Story.
Yeah,
that's what they're using.
and you know, yeah, that's what he uses to show how ridiculous society is when it comes to the treatment of LGBTQIA people in our society.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah.
It's like a governmental threat. It's like it's not just people minding their own business and doing what they want. Like I gotta call the law. I gotta, you know, it's extreme.
Yeah.
And it's like me and my partner are just trying to eat pizza rolls in my house. And like you think you can make legislation saying we shouldn't?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it to me it talks about the extreme reaction to people just existing, and I really do appreciate that. Like even though he says he doesn't know what he's doing, there are parts of this movie that make me think like you're a fucking liar. You do, like you know, or you know what you wanted to say.
Well, he's very humble. He's a very humble man, like, but he's so like charismatic, and he's got a couple of books out that I want to get. I want to listen to him on audio tape because he narrates them. One of the books was he about 20 years ago, maybe even less, but he hitchhiked around America as John Waters, and then he wrote stories, wrote stories about it, and he put out the book, and then he did the audiobook on it. So I want to get that. But he also he's doing a book tour currently. This, you know,
he's alive.
Yeah, John Waters is still alive.
Mandela effect. I thought he was dead.
No, he's alive. He's still alive, and he's still touring as of right now. So, yeah, man, just he's such an important figure in filmmaking, and I love this movie. So I guess now it's time to talk about what you thought about this movie.
No. You're wrong. So I'm leading the episode, and I actually want to know.
Thank you.
I actually want to know your opinion. I want to think. What do you think about this movie overall? I want to think. What are maybe some things that we didn't touch on that you might have to say? What do you want to say to people who have never seen this movie before? Just all of that. Miguel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate you. So when we were going, hold on a second, sorry.
Of course. Doesn't have any notes about gay people. He looks at his paper and it's all blank.
Gay, ugh.
Honestly, if you're gay, you know what it means.
Yeah. So when we were talking about what movies to talk about on this podcast, but also specifically for this year. One of the movies, the follow up, the runner up to Multiple Maniacs was The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, which is a giallo movie, right? And I love giallo movies, and I was thinking like, man, I would love to talk about The Bird with the Crystal Plumage because it's got that 70s Italian fashion vibe that you love. And I was like, you know
Mhm.
what? That'd be such an easy intro for Anthony.
Ah.
But I was like, I'm not going for easy. I want to do the hardcore because yeah, man, the 70s is dirty and grimy and
Mhm.
transgressive and all that sort of stuff and
Slimy.
slimy and nasty and ugly. And I was like, this is the way that we introduce Anthony to the 70s. No,
Mhm.
I'm not going in nice and smooth. I'm ramming it. All right. And that's what we're talking about.
Ramming it in.
Ramming it in. That's
Yeah.
what we're talking about with Multiple Maniacs. And I think it's such a important movie. And I know, and we were talking about this earlier. I know that like the views on episodes suffers because the name is lower. Like not a lot of people have seen Multiple Maniacs. It's
Mhm.
not a mainstream movie, but I'm like, fuck that. I don't want to do mainstream movies. I want to do the movies that I like, and I want to do the directors, the creators that I like, the artists that I think are important. And
Hell yeah.
and I wanted to do, I have this opportunity to do this podcast with somebody who is in the LGBTQIA community. And yeah,
Hell yeah. I'm a British cigarette.
and so I wanted to, take advantage of that. I wanted to get views outside of my own, and I wanted to bring that to our audience. So when it came to like Multiple Maniacs, I was like, fuck yeah, I want to do that. I want to talk about John Waters. I want to talk about it with you. I loved it. Again, it's important to state that it's not a good movie. Like I know this going in, right? It's an important movie, and it's important in so many ways. And I was going to say this earlier. John Waters is like one of the only directors that I can think of that I have seen since I've seen like most of his movies. Now going into even like his studio days, a natural progression of somebody getting better at their craft, right?
Wow.
It's been
Okay.
nothing but up every single movie from 70s, 72, 74, from Multiple Maniacs to Pink Flamingo, Female Trouble to Polyester and then Hairspray and Crybaby and then Serial Mom. And then after that, I haven't really seen anything else. But like, it's a natural progression of just getting better and better and better at what he does. And, I'm always an advocate of going back to the source, to the original, to see how it all started. And
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
is kind of like you're saying, it was his first feature length movie with sound, right? That was an actual talkie. And
Right.
so, yeah, so I thought it was really important to talk with you about it. But I know that it's not a well acted movie. It's not a well shot movie. It's not, it's a bizarre movie. All that is true, and still it's a good movie. Like it's a good, what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a very important movie. It's a
Yeah.
great movie, and it's important to see. So yeah.
It's kind of like required watching for certain people. So there's a movie that came out recently on the streaming service. The streaming service I don't like to call up by name.
On
Shudder.
Shitter.
Shitter on Shitter TV. So there's a movie on Shitter called Death Drop Gorgeous.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not talking shit about this movie. I love it. It's great, but it's one of those. It's one of the very first movies I've ever watched that's so bad it's good, and it's very fucking gay. And they show a poll 20 minutes in, like, go watch Death Drop Gorgeous. However, I think what's the Multiple Maniacs. It's very clearly one of those movies that walked so other movies could run.
Right.
And so, like, if this movie didn't exist, I do believe a lot of other gay movies wouldn't exist. I think maybe Sleepaway Camp wouldn't have come out for another couple years because of this movie.
Yeah, I feel like that's such a great point because, like, I think John Waters was taking a heat for a lot of your faves right now,
Yes, yes.
and he grinded. Like, if you talk about like grinding, like
Mm,
he took these movies to to each city himself. He threw the movie in the back of his
Mm-hmm.
truck, in his trunk, and drove it. And he wasn't getting spots at theaters. He was renting out storefronts, and charge, they would charge him $200-300 to rent the storefront. And then he would
Mm-hmm.
go out and sell tickets to have people come, and kind of like what they were doing at the beginning of this movie, like getting people
Yes.
to come to
Yes.
watch the movie. And a lot of times Divine would go with him, and she would be out there like handing out flyers to people, like what we're talking about. And so if he didn't make his money back, then he just lost that out.
Mm-hmm.
So he was hustling for the culture, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
it's so
Yes.
important. Yeah, I think he's him and Divine and the whole troop. They're just it's so important. And I'll tell people, if you haven't seen this movie, like if you listen this far and you haven't seen the movie, like, I love you. Thanks for rocking with us.
Right.
But like, also see this movie. It's on HBO Max. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's really good.
Like I don't necessarily know if I would recommend it to horror fans, but I just know for a fact, like if I had a big group of queer people, gay friends who loved horror, I'm showing them this.
Mhm.
It's like this, like I said, it's kind of required viewing, just so you can see how horror got to where it is now. Like, I'm not saying this movie opened the way for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I do think it allowed for some of the disgustingness that followed. And it's like, oh well, at least no one's getting ass fucked in the church. Just somebody's getting killed by a chainsaw. I think it opened the door and allowed for a lot of other things that happened in the 70s, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'll just say, like, I completely understand what you're saying about like showing it to your gay friends, your the queer friends, or whatever. But also, if you're not queer, if you're not part of the LGBTQIA community, still fucking see the movie, because it's fucking
Get
worth it.
with it, homophobes.
Yeah,
No.
like, get out of your like comfort zone. Stop watching just slashers or whatever, or zombie movies, and go watch something else, something with value. And this does have value. It has a ton of value. So that's me. That's what I thought of it. I'd love to hear kind of your summation of what you thought about
Oh. Well, I didn't watch the movie, so I don't really have
it. You're just reading the Wikipedia article. That's it.
Okay, so like I still kind of don't know how I feel about the movie.
Mhm.
I just know that there are certain people who I would absolutely watch this with.
Mhm.
I know that I can literally imagine in my brain right now, literally just off the Podmortem Discord,
Yeah.
like I'll take you, I'll take you, I'll take you, and like we would have a really good time watching this movie.
Yeah.
And like they're not even all queer. It's just like, this is fun. This is going to be fun for some people. For some people, it might be educational. For some people, it might just be a garbage movie that you like don't understand why you watch that. However,
That attitude pisses me off so much. That attitude of
mine.
like, no.
Oh, I was like, wait, whoa, 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 whoa.
And that's the end of my 70s confessional. No, Anthony. The attitude of somebody saying like, that's disgusting. I don't know why you would watch that. But at the same time, I've never seen a Serbian film, so. But I'm not comparing one to the other. I'm just saying, like,
Right. No, you're fine. No, like this movie is kind of jarring. A lot of the time throughout this movie, I'm asking why. What is this? So it's as you mentioned earlier, it's not a good movie. However, I do believe it's one of those movies that's kind of like required watching. It's not good. It's in black and white. The acting isn't much to write home about. However, there are things. I think this is one of those movies when you're living in 2022 where you can, what's the word? Ascribe more positive attributes to this movie than was intended.
Mhm.
Because like as John Waters says, like, oh, I didn't know what I was doing. So like I think you can kind of put good where good wasn't intended, and that kind of counts for something. So like it's very clearly made by like a gay man, and gay issues of like LGBTQ, what have you. So I think it's worth a watch at the very least to say that you've seen it, because this movie definitely laid the groundwork for movies that came after.
Yeah. It's like if you're a horror fan, how do you know where the
Mm-hmm.
genre is going if you don't know where it's been? You know,
Exactly.
and this is where just a lot of it came from. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's a reason why John Waters is known and like loved so much to this day, 50 years later.
Absolutely.
It's
Mm-hmm.
not because his movies were trash, which they were, but in a good sense.
At that time.
It's a good sense of it. So yeah, just get out of your comfort zone. Like why do you watch horror other than to feel uncomfortable, right? And this movie, if nothing else, will make you
Mm-hmm.
feel
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable. And that's what John
Absolutely.
Waters specializes in. Like you were talking earlier about I don't remember exactly what you're talking about. But like, we were talking about John Waters and like his oeuvre, like the movies he's done. And I was remembering Pink Flamingos yesterday, or Pink Flamingos I saw yesterday, and Divine literally goes down on a dude in the movie, and we see it.
Ooh.
We see Peen, we see her
Eh,
mouth go down on it for like 2 minutes, and it's a
jealous.
well, let me tell you, it's a mother son relationship. So,
Never
so,
mind.
so I mean, who?
Whoops.
Yeah, John Waters. I'll just keep going on and on about how much I love John Waters. So, you want to come to ratings? You're the host here. You're slacking. You got to make me shut up because I'll keep talking.
So no, oh no, hey, you act like I'm not enjoying the convo.
Okay.
So my final question is: out of 5 upside down brown crucifixes, what do you
No,
rate this movie?
no, no, Anthony, God, no. Oh shit! Now's the time to introduce my new logo. Where I just got some stickers, and I'll be dropping those so people can buy them on the Patreon. It's going to be dropping soon. It's not a brown
So this is
crucifix.
what we call avoidance in the psychology field. When somebody doesn't really want to answer your question, so they talk about something else.
Okay.
I don't know. Should I go bust out my doctorate because I didn't get it off
No,
a
no,
cereal box?
no. Okay. So brown, upside down brown crucifixes. I would give it three upside down brown crucifixes, and yeah, I've already like I feel like the podboard. I'm not gonna say what you guys already said because it's already been said, but yeah, I think I'll stick with 3 upside down brown crucifixes.
Cool. All right. So
How about you?
I give it 2. I give it 2 upside down brown crucifixes. This movie. Okay. So for me, this movie doesn't make sense until the third watch. The first one is shocking. The second one is like, okay, I kind of see where you're going. But the third watch, I feel like I had to do a lot of the heavy lifting when it came to this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I had to decide why this was a good scene, or I had to decide why this was a bad scene. And I kind of think that's a little mark of like bad filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
However, I know in certain scenes that John Waters was really trying to convey a certain message. And like, I'm not trying to shit on that. Also, because 1970 was 50 years ago. I cannot express to you what a long fucking time ago that was. There was no internet, there were no iPads, there was no Coke available 24 hours a day. That's not how things worked in the 70s. Today, you can get cocaine delivered to you via Uber Eats or DoorDash.
Aren't you ordering
Um,
Uber Eats all the time?
don't worry about what I'm doing.
Okay.
I love chicken nuggets.
Okay.
No, so it's clearly a joke, but I think because I can't personally put myself in the shoes of a queer person in 1970s, I don't think anybody else can. Because like you can't imagine what life is like without your phone. You can't imagine what life is like without being able to watch anything you want to watch on TV when you want to watch it. Things were really, really, really different then. And also, once again, when we think about 50 years ago as gay people, oh yeah, they can call me a fag and beat me up, and they're not going to see not going to see a day of jail time. But 50 years ago, in 1970, when gay people were existing, I could only imagine what they would think. Like, oh, 50 years ago, the people you love can take you to an institution and fill you with electroshocks. And once again, those are the people who love you. Let's not even talk about the people who don't love you or the people who hate you for who you are.
Mm.
So, like, I don't know what was going on in their heads. So, this movie has reasons to be appreciated. And I think it's up to every individual who watches it to find it. But there are reasons. And it's not, it's bad acting. It's cheesy. Yeah, sure. But if you watch Riverdale, I don't need to hear about that shit. Like, don't tell me what's cheesy. The fuck? You watch Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. I know you like cheese. Bitch, we got Munster and Swiss. Like, so
Did somebody say Swiss cheese? I'm right here.
right, yeah, Miguel's college years, so
Oh man, we've been on for a while. I am losing it. Let me ask you this then. So I'm still filling you out. I'm still trying to figure you out here. So this is our first movie that we're doing. If we're thinking of a sliding scale and you hate the 70s, so from
Mhm.
1 to 10, 10 this is where I'm at. 1 is you absolutely hate it. Where would you be at? Like before we started talking, are you at a 1 for the 70s?
2,
You're
because I like the music.
okay. So you're at a 2. All right. So sliding scale, 10 best, 1 worst. You're at a 2. I want to know so I could feel you out for future movies and our next episodes. Did this movie slide up the scale? Did it bring it back? Did it leave it the same? What are you thinking?
I'm at the same.
Damn.
I was
Damn.
not. I was not moved. I was not moved backwards or forwards. I accept this. I accepted this movie for what it was. Do I like what it was? No.
Okay.
But you know what? You did your thing,
Okay.
and you're an artist, and you're probably sensitive about your shit.
Mhm.
So
Okay. All right. That's fair. That's fair. I got to do better. That just means I got to do better. So next week, this experiment that you've joined us for, I'm going to be throwing another movie at Anthony, seeing how it sticks. 1971, we're going to do The Blood on Satan's Claw. It's a folk horror movie. I really dig folk horror, so I want to see how Anthony responds to it, and then I might have to adjust my expectations depending on how he responds to it. But I just wanted to say from myself, I'm sure Anthony feels the same way. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey throughout the 70s.
Mhm.
Every week we're going to have a new episode for that year. So this was 1970. Next episode will be 1971, and then the next one was 72. And y'all know how math works, and going forward. So we're really looking forward to this. We're having a blast recording it. I hope you guys are having a blast listening to it. Please let us know some movies that Anthony should watch. If you want to hit us up on Twitter, Anthony, where can the people follow you?
That's AnthonyJeromM on Twitter. AnthonyJerom, capital M after that M, so it's 2 M's. So Anthony Jerome M. Listen, I love Twitter. It's where I'm most active. If you think you have a movie from the 70s that you think I need to watch or would want to watch, please tell me. Also, I'm a very sensitive boy. Don't tell me what I need to do. I don't like that. I'm very sensitive.
Right. They can make
But
suggestions.
you can suggest all day, all day. Like even so, just don't tell me what I need to do. But if you have a suggestion, I'll listen. Shutter's cheap, even though I hate her.
And if you'd like to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter at MHCPod, like My Horror Confessional Pod. On Instagram, I'm at My Horror Confessional. If you'd like to email the show, you can email me at myhorrorconfessional@gmail.com. The music was done by Taylor Fox. We got some brand new 70s style music for y'all. Hope you enjoy that. That was done by Taylor Fox as well. She's the one who did the original one. You can follow her on Instagram at the Taylor Fox. And the artwork for that dope ass artwork that everybody loves was actually done by Brian Demarest. And you can follow him on Twitter at Evil Flynn with 2 N's at the end there. Evil Flynn. And that was the show. Thank you so much for joining us, Anthony. Anything to say?
No.